Don't get any viewers whatsoever. Really, that's really embarrassing. But, you know, such is life. So, meanwhile, I'm going to do a thing where I do a thing. Anyway, this can get on here. Getting unwrapped a little bit, and we can just kind of talk anime and manga. Wow, what's the deal with that? Huh, that's bizarre. Okay. That's slightly better. Should probably get this going again, and we'll see if anyone cares. Meanwhile, I will talk about stuff. I wonder, actually. It's releases. Do they have licenses? Releases. That's not what I want. Huh. Maybe it's a forum post. Releases. Licenses. 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 Oh, that's interesting. License check shows up under Geek Spectrum. That's interesting. We have good Google foo there. But it doesn't appear to be anybody really tracking this stuff. That's bizarre. Why isn't there anyone tracking this stuff? Hello, viewer. So, FYI, I am just doing a live show, just talking generally. I'm going to be talking about good behavior in otaku, sort of advice for the otaku, as opposed to doing license check, because I don't think people really care about license check. I am kind of surprised that no one seems to be tracking anime licenses. Anime license North America. Let's just try that. Gotta be someone tracking this stuff. Q2 2015, there's a My Anime List forum entry. That might do it. Let's try that. We'll do it. So there it is. So yeah, someone is tracking it. This is July, but no one did June. So there must be a Q3 2015 licenses. There it is. Yep. So anything really cool in June? Wait. Okay. So Sentai announced The World is Still Beautiful. Anime Limited. Aoharu Exkikanju Mirai Nikki. So Future Diary coming to Dramatic Murder. Various stuff in Australia. Not much. And then manga, really nothing either. That's surprising. There really wasn't much of anything in Q3. We're March, April, May, June. Yeah, that's June. That's weird. Why isn't there anything for that? That's bizarre. Anyway, so I'm going to get started on some baking. We're going to do some sort of otaku no cooking here. And I'll probably do some cleanup around here as well, while we do some other stuff. In fact, what I might do is brownies plus that. Hey, Liquid. Yeah, I was supposed to do a license check today. I kind of swapped things around a little bit. I was going to do a live license check, but the license check is one of our smallest shows, and people don't seem to really care what's been licensed recently, and it becomes kind of a list. So I might, put together a video, but I thought instead I would do a video or a live stream where I do some otaku no cooking, and we talk about good fan practices, like, if a new young fan came to you and said, "Hi, I'm new to anime," what advice would you give him and her? So I'm going to open that up kind of to you guys as well. If a 15-year-old who's watched Naruto or One Piece or whatever meets you and says, "Oh, I love anime." I actually kind of had this recently. There was this like 10-year-old boy in the neighborhood who I got chatting with. I was out flying my drone around, and he came up, and it turns out he watches Naruto. And obviously, he's a little young to be considered an otaku, but I don't know. Look, what do you think? If a new fan came to you and said, "I want to get into anime," what, not just like what anime would you recommend, but kind of what practices would you recommend? What advice would you give that person about what to do or what not to do? I think it's kind of an interesting topic. Meanwhile, I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning up and start on some things. I'm going to make brownies, and I'm going to make some cinnamon bread for tomorrow. And I think, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and start that. This uses the 13 by 9 pan, which is kind of big, which I think, yeah, that's ready to go. And I think I'll do a little bit of cleaning up first, actually, because I got some sort of dishes scattered around. You know, for me, for young fans, I generally recommend breadth. You know, watch a lot of different things from different eras. Don't get caught up in the current anime fad and say, "Oh, you're only going to watch stuff coming out right now." Watch lots of different things. I think that's a valuable thing. And you kind of avoid cynicism in general. He left already. Oh well. So yeah, I think it's helpful to kind of say, okay, there are going to be people that there are going to be trends that you don't like, and that's fine. Normal trends are okay. Those don't have to define you or your fandom. Wait it out. I had that issue with Mecha, where we had that long drought without Mecha series for a very long time during the 2000s, and now we're starting to see a little bit more of that over the past 5 years or so. So, you know, just wait it out. Quick little tip: all of my Rubbermaid containers are the same size, so I can stack them all, and they all take up one nice little bit of space. I also write on them. Kind of can't see very well because they wash off a little bit, but I write my name on them so that when I take them to work, everyone knows they're mine. So folks don't take from them. So yeah, I think when you're just starting out in anime, it's really easy to get caught up in those basic things and saying, well, you know, I'm going to do what everyone else does. And that's a valid strategy to begin with, because you don't know. Like, that's pretty smart. But you do have to find your own way. You have to find the things you like. And when you look at things like let's see, move that down a little bit. You look at things like movies versus TV shows are a great example. A lot of fans are better off starting with movies and OVAs and watching those, because those are a good length. You know, you can kind of get into things. You can kind of understand things. And there are quite a few movies out there, and there are a lot of movies that just don't get talked about much that have come out. I think a lot of them are subbed only, but that's okay. And you learn a lot, and you get a lot of find out a lot of interesting stories. I don't know. I guess I get really frustrated with cynicism, and I see so much of it. It's just, you know, just such an easy and obvious and boring trap to get into. Be cynical about anime. But gee, have some joy in your life, instead of being cynical all the time. Besides, I do think that cynicism is, for a lot of people, a way of not engaging. It's a way of saying, I don't have to care about this thing. I don't have to show how much I love this thing. Because I can be cynical. It's kind of that too cool for school thing. So I think that happens a lot. Which is unfortunate. I mean, come on. Life's too short. And then these go in there. These away. Rangers of dinner. Put that down a little bit. So I think I will do a quick license check because it'll only be like 5 things. It's a very quiet month in Lake Anime. Okay, so the high schooler watches DBZ Naruto Fairy Tail. Go Outside just shonen and brought his views on anime. Yeah, that's good. That's a very good point, actually, too, is to show people other things that they may not like, and just kind of give them that that kind of spectrum to choose from, and say, okay, here's something serious, here's something really goofy, etc. And I think Lane is a great example, probably the example of a completely serious show where there's basically no comedy, there's no romance, it's all this sort of psychological, serious thriller stuff. And so you're right, it's a great way of saying, whether or not you like this will help to calibrate things. And that's an excellent idea. Liquid. And by the way, because I keep forgetting, would you rather, and I know we've covered this before, would you rather call you Liquid or Liquid Us? Because Liquid Us just kind of sounds nice and Roman. But I'm assuming you mean like Liquid You Snake or something? I don't know. But yeah, that's a great way of doing it. Which opens up an interesting question. So what are those sort of calibration shows? And I mean, again, Lane would be a good one. Cowboy Bebop. I think on the comedy side, you might want to try Trigun, because that's pretty wacky in its comedy, but it's close enough to Western style. People aren't going to get completely freaked out. And it has kind of a better chance, if you will. You get a sense that they say, oh, I liked it, but it was too goofy. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start on the brownies first because those have to bake, and the rest of it can kind of wait on. So the brownies, I start by microwaving together chocolate and butter. And unfortunately, I don't have my normal container for that. So instead, I'm going to do it in a big bowl, which hopefully will be big enough. We will see. So this requires 1.5 sticks of butter. 1.5 sticks of butter. I think I just happen to have here. Good. And then 4 ounces of chocolate I'm going to melt together. J Stars. Interesting war fanatic. What is J Stars about? I will Google it, obviously, but that sounds like a rhythm, pop idol kind of a game. So now I'm just cutting that into a few chunks. So there's 1.5 sticks of butter. And to that, I'm going to add my 4 ounces of chocolate. In this case, a nice big bar. Beware when you do this of the actual amount. It kind of varies by bar. Sometimes it's like 4 ounces, sometimes it's 6 ounces. It's not obvious. And it's this nice Ghirardelli chocolate. Because why not? Beware, be careful. Note that this requires unsweetened chocolate, this brownie recipe, because you add sugar to it. And that's important because if you add too much sugar, nice chocolate bar. Again, there's no sugar in this whatsoever. And so if you add sugar to it, it's going to break down. It's not just going to make it sweeter. It's not going to be able to actually hold together as kind of a batter. And you'll have this kind of gooey mess and not an actual brownie. So just be aware there. So I'm going to microwave this in 30-second intervals. And then, oh yeah, actually this all goes together in a bowl. So that's easy enough. So let me anchor this a little bit. Liquidus is the official nickname for online purposes. Others just say liquid for easy pronunciation. Okay, cool. I figured it wasn't too big of a deal. All right, so separately I'm going to beat together 4 eggs and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Each, or 1. Me, 2. I know you kind of can't see this at all. Let me at least make this a little more visible. San. Oh! Little shell fell down. And then Yon. Now what I do to break eggs is I break them as I crack them on a hard surface. So just sort of wrapping them on a hard surface, which breaks the surface but doesn't split it. Then I rotate it a bit and crack it again, rotate it again and crack it again. And that way you tend to get a line along that as a fracture. You have other fractures too, but that's the weakest point, and then you can open that up. You can just split it in half. Very convenient. And if you're doing multiple eggs, just do them all at once, and then you wash your hands afterwards because, you know, if my hands are dirty now, well, when I put them on the egg that I'm going to throw away, it doesn't matter. Shonen Jump video game, released in June. Oh, cool. Oh, okay. So that's the thing where you've got all the different Shonen Jump characters fighting. That's cool. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. There's a 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm just going to blend that together first. Well, actually, I can go back to my bowl, and you'll see just 30 seconds is not going to be enough to do much. The butter is slightly melty, but that's about it. So I'm going to stir that a little bit. The very bottom of the chocolate is a little melted. You can kind of see that here and there, but there's not much change yet. I'm going to put that in for another 30 seconds. The nice thing is you can microwave chocolate at 30-second intervals kind of forever. You know, it's not really going to hurt anything. So now I'm just whisking those eggs together with the salt. The salt helps to break up the eggs a little bit. I'm using a regular old fork there. So the salt kind of gets in there and shatters the eggs and the yolks. You got the yolks and the whites. And then I'm going to add the sugar and vanilla. Those can go back in. So I'm going to measure out the sugar. That's a little cleaner, just a little simpler. So let's see here. Yeah, you can microwave chocolate and butter at 30-second intervals basically forever, and you're not going to burn it. You can burn chocolate if you cook it too fast, but if you microwave for 30 seconds and bring it out and stir it, then you're pretty safe. I mean, if you kept on doing it 30 seconds and then immediately 30 seconds, you'd have a problem. But, all right, so I want 400 grams of sugar. That's about 2 cups. Again, you could totally just do cups here, but I like the measuring here in this case because I don't need to now use a measuring cup. Almost there. 99, 400. You know, I've now measured in the sugar. Solidus liquidus. There we go. Huh. If by American robot versus Japanese robot, you mean the fight between, was it Warmax and Sudobashi Heavy Industries? Yes, which is awesome. So there's that, and then I'm going to add, well, I'm going to stir this again. So you can see now we've got some meltiness going on. I can actually angle this down a little bit more. So we've got some melted butter in there, and we've got some chocolate in there, but they're definitely still very lumpy. This is by no means combined yet. So I'm just stirring that around a little bit, try to get the hot on the bottom near the not so hot on the top. There we go. And this reminds me that now I need to put an apron on. And no, this is not hentai, so I'm going to be wearing clothes underneath it. Yeah, names online are tough. You want to find something unique. Famously, that's how XKCD got started. It's a unique 4-letter word that you can just use as his username everywhere. So while that's going, I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla, or about 6 grams. Yeah, so I'll just do that this way. Tear that, then add 6 grams of vanilla. It's interesting how vanilla will add a certain piquancy, a strong vanilla flavor, but it won't, it won't make it taste like vanilla. It just adds a nice little extra punch to the things. Okay, then I'm going to stir that, just so we have something stirred there. So I'm just adding, so that's the sugar with the vanilla, the eggs, and the salt all together. 4 eggs, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 2 cups of sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla. And you'll end up with something just kind of simple and goopy like this. And now we're going to add chocolate once it's melted together. So we pull this out. It's hot, but not terrible. And you can see at this point, it's coming together, but I can still get lumps of chocolate in there. So that's not melted together quite yet. But I'm glad I'm bringing this out now because I can stir it together. So I can make this something a little closer to an actual melted chocolate thingy. I'm just going to stir that around so it's not as lumpy. And then I'm going to put that back in there for what will undoubtedly be its final 30 seconds. You want this combined, right? Which reminds me. Oh yeah. So what I'm going to do actually, I can already melt that. So this is all going in a 9x13 pan. And I can do that a couple different ways. I think what I'm going to do is add some parchment paper to the bottom. And I think if I do this right, cover it just right there, I'll have to mess about with it a bit. So, and that's one of the reasons why online I just go by Brent Newhall, because it's fairly easy. Okay, so I cut this out, and unfortunately it doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to cut a little bit off of this so it will fit in there. The oven's already at 350 degrees, actually 360 because this oven is runs a little cool. There we go. So now I can put that in there, and I'm actually going to use a little bit of spray. So here's a neat little trick. If I spray, there's a little dot down in there, and the paper sticks to that. And it doesn't bounce up quite as much. And I might actually, I'm going to spray the rest of this a little bit, especially the sides because there's no paper there. So I want a good amount of spray there. So for those watching and were wondering about the whole American robot versus Japanese robot thing, a company is trying to build essentially mech warrior mechs in real life and do kind of battle bots in real life, or rather battle bots with actual human pilots. And then they challenged Japan and said, hey, you guys make mecha all the time, right? Why don't you do it? Why don't you do something here? And there we go. That's beautiful. So this is our melted chocolate. And as I stir that around, I don't feel any lumps. This is the main thing there, is you want this to be smooth, because that smoothness, or any lumps rather, are going to remain lumps in the brownie. So you'll have a hunk of unsweetened chocolate in the middle of your brownie, which is not good eats. So now I'm just going to pour that right into that bowl. And we'll check here. And we're going to add some flour, right? I'm going to add some of that. I'm actually going to hold off a little bit and do this in stages. They recommend using a wooden spoon for this for various heat purposes. So I'm just stirring that, trying to get that chocolate in there. You don't want to pour all the chocolate in at once because you have eggs in here. And you're going to pour it directly into eggs. Those eggs can essentially cook if you put too much hot stuff in with them immediately. So I'm tempering it by adding some of the chocolate and then letting that, and then incorporating that. Then I'll add the rest of the chocolate. There we go, and I'm going to scrape that out. No point in wasting it. There we are. Now you wish you could get all of it off. It's not to be. All right. And I'm just going to stir all that in. Now this is obviously very wet. You can see it's just sliding all around. Not quite a batter yet suitable for brownies because they don't have any flour in it. The flour will add the last bit of consistency you need. So War Fanatic, you've been slightly misinformed, unfortunately. There will be a new Blu-ray set of just the original Mobile Suit Gundam TV series. So Right Stuff announced, as I understand it, that they're going to release just the original Mobile Suit Gundam TV series, all 43 episodes, on Blu-ray later this year. And they're working on other Universal Century things, but they're not doing one big Blu-ray for everything, as far as I know, unfortunately. They are planning on releases for all those shows, though. Or at least the ones that haven't been licensed yet. So I don't think they're releasing Zeta, for example, because that's already been released. Oh no, they said they're doing Zeta, because that only had the expensive box set release. But obviously they're not doing Unicorn. They're not doing Seed. Well, but Seed's alternate universe. CE. Eighth MS Team. They're not doing. As far as I know. Okay, so we now have a nice ribbony chocolate mixture, but again, this is a little bit too wet for brownie dough. So to this, I'm going to add how much? 1 cup of flour, which is 140 grams. So again, I just like doing it this way because it saves on measuring cups. As long as I can read it, which is a little difficult. 120, 130, oops, yeah, 130, 130 something. Yeah. 138, 140. There we go. Okay, and then you just mix that flour into the rest of your batter. Oh, nice. Sailor Moon R is coming out. That's good. Folks are getting their copies. Yeah, Right Stuff tries to, hit those release windows, but they release early if they can. It's kind of like, well, okay, so you get it 2 or 3 days early. Who cares? And that builds up some interest in the show. So Right Stuff's nice that way. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know where that is with what's streaming. Those rights, I'm sure, are completely different. The streaming versus the Blu-ray. So once all that flour is incorporated, you get something that's Still wet, but it's now thick. Now a little bit more like, I don't know, a fudge sauce. And so that can go. All right, War Fanatic, I will Google that. Again, I think what they're referring to is that Right Step is releasing all of them on separate box sets as opposed to one big Blu-ray, but I will check that out momentarily. So these are going right in here. I'm going to double check the recipe. Yeah. All right. Now, of course, you can add ingredients to this. So you can look at this and you can add nuts to it, for example. Always a favorite. You could add hunks of chocolate, but with sugar in it. It's nice. So that goes into the oven. One favorite addition is peanut butter. That's just going to be straight up brownies. And the nice thing about straight up brownies is you can just, go for it. Or you can add things to it afterwards. So you can take those cooked brownies and sprinkle peanuts on them, or spread peanut butter on them, what have you. Okay. So before I check, it's Gundam. I got to check it out first. So I'm Googling that now, and then I can get out my bread recipe while that's going on. So I'm going to be making a special kind of bread, actually in the bread machine, that I call, let's see here, bread, donuts, muffin bread, which is good in of itself. That's tempting. Good now. Hot cross buns. Oh, hot cross buns. I think that requires, beer rolls, bagels, or bagels, and swirl bread. Ooh, swirl bread. That's tempting. Needs to rise though. Don't really want that. I know I have what's called Dell's favorite morning bread in here somewhere. That's the recipe I have. So yeah, there it is. It has honey and cinnamon. It's quite nice. Okay. Pop that up. And put the sundae thing over here. So I will prep this. And let's see here. Yeah, all of the announcements that I'm seeing are not saying that there is one Blu-ray release for everything. They're saying that there will be that the franchise will be officially released on home video, DVD, Blu-ray in the United States, but it is not saying that there is going to be one DVD and Blu-ray release. And then those stories go on to say that Mobile Suit Gundam itself is going to be DVD and Blu-ray. So I don't think that's happening. It'll be interesting. The thing is, if that happens, I mean, who's going to buy that? It would be hideously expensive. I mean, you're talking, what, 10 shows? Maybe not that many, but 7 or 8, like 50-episode TV series. That'd be a hideously expensive box set. So they might do it, but it would surprise me. What's the earliest I've seen White Stuff release something? Wow. I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't really paid much attention to that. Oh, I gotta get this going. Sorry. Gotta time that. So 25 minutes roughly. And it's been in there. Well, we'll do 25 minutes. I know these tend to underbake, so 25 minutes is a reasonable thing with a few extra minutes just to check them in there. So sadly, I don't think we're getting everything in one set, but who knows? High School Dead OVA. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's still a fair amount of stuff going on there for localizing and so forth. But yeah, for a 16-minute feature, that's not gonna, that shouldn't take long. Certainly. So I'm just gonna get this stuff going. The nice thing about this morning bread recipe is that you just dump everything into your bread machine and let it go, and then you have your bread the next day. So this I am going to do that. The men's room. Yeah, one of the good things that White Stuff does is they tend to under-promise and over-deliver. So they'll give you their worst-case estimate for how long it'll take, and then go from there, because they know things always take longer than you expect. It's just so true. All right, so I think for this, I'm going to go ahead and spin this around. These are pans that I did some cooking in earlier today and had hot oil in them. So I had to wait for them to cool down before I actually process them. So I can actually take care of them now, but I kind of don't want to, not this second. Okay, so we'll do it on power, that's fine. Ah, yes, the morning bread. So I've adapted this a little bit to be a decent size for this bread machine, because I have a small bread machine, as you kind of can tell. This is not a huge pan. It can only handle, I think, about 3 to 3.5 cups of flours in a recipe. So this starts with the water, and then goes up to some butter, and then some non-fat milk, and then the dry. Okay, good. So that's easy. So this starts with, and they ask for warm water, which is a good idea, generally speaking, but for this, I can actually live without it. So we're starting with 80 grams of water. Oops. Oh, an overboard there. Is that all? How much? Oh, I can go for the full size thing on this one. Let's see here. Seems to me that's a 3-cup. I don't know. I'm weirded out by the recipe. But you know what? I'm gonna go with it. So it's all right. That's gonna be tiny, I tell ya. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go for it. It's not a good idea to guesstimate these things. A little bit more out of there. Now I cook with filtered water because my regular water doesn't taste very good out of the tap. And if I'm cooking, I want, nice stuff in cooking. Hello, Frogger. So that's there. So now I'm going to add about 20 grams of honey, which is almost always a good thing in a recipe. The nice thing about honey is that it provides a slightly more, it provides a special flavor. I mean, sugar can be a little neutral, and it can have its own properties. It does have its own properties. Honey has that, I don't know, that honey flavor to it, which tends to disappear in baked goods, generally speaking. Oh, you saw my review of Nanoha. Cool. And then we're going to add half a tablespoon of butter or oil. And I have to pop out a new thing there. Nanoha was interesting. Not my favorite show, but I guess it had its moments. I guess I fell into the trap with Nanoha, like with a lot of things, that it was a little overhyped, and unfortunately, I let that get to me. I try not to, but that was one of those shows where just people were blown away by it, and I was like, nah, I've seen this before. And the execution was, the execution was effective, but because I'm not a huge magical girl person, it just didn't really blow me away. I mean, if you've seen my review, I don't know how you kind of know what I say. I don't recommend things unless I know what people like. If you're big into Magical Girl series, it's a solid Magical Girl series. It does everything a Magical Girl is supposed to do, and it does some slightly unusual things with that. If you don't like Magical Girl, I probably wouldn't throw it your way. It's probably not going to blow you away. Then some non-fat dry milk. That needs to be down here. Actually, I'm using, oh, no, there it is. I'm tempted to substitute some buttermilk for that. Let's actually do that. That's kind of tempting. Let's do that. Instead of non-fat dry milk, I'm going to add some buttermilk powder. So I don't know, what kind of anime do you like there, Frogger? And thanks for the respect. Much appreciated. So a tablespoon of, in this case, buttermilk powder, which should be kind of interesting. Add a little je ne sais quoi to there. Where'd the cat go? There it is. So what are some of your favorite shows? And, well, let me grab the yeast slogan here. Half teaspoon salt, half teaspoon cinnamon. So salt. And then, actually, I'm going to add the rest of the dry in right now. I need 240 grams of that. And I use, I think, bread and whole wheat. Yeah, so got some bread here. Like When They Cry, Certain Magical Index, Mystery Betrayals and stuff. Then yeah, I think Nanoha would be a good choice for you. It's mostly bread flour with a little wheat out of 240. So I'm going to do about 200 grams of bread flour and then another 400 of wheat. Oops. Bread flour. Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, Right Stuff likes to give people, the right stuff, so to speak. Their customer service is amazing. Although I actually had a friend who was blackballed, if you will, by blacklisted by Right Stuff because he sent too many things back. Like everything had to be in absolutely pristine, kind of no fingerprints kind of condition. And at some point they were like, okay, you sent this back 3 times. But that's pretty extreme. I've always had the best of experiences with them. So wheat flour, I'm going all the way up to 40. Keiichi the Ultimate Survivor, fair enough. Hey, War Fanatic. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the Japanese anime comedy. I mean, there's not. The Chinese market is certainly significant, but they're a fraction of the larger one. I hear you, and I agree that that's going to be significant. I don't mean to downplay it, but fortunately, I think China still hasn't gotten big enough as a legitimate consumer to be an issue. I could be wrong. Okay, so there's that. Then I'm going to add half teaspoon cinnamon. Cinnamon and paprika. I can no longer look at paprika without thinking of the anime film. But yeah, hopefully China's not too big of a deal. I know they are an increasingly large portion of that. But yeah, so I agree that hopefully it's not too big of a deal. We'll have to find out. All right, and then a teaspoon of yeast. Is that right? Yeah, teaspoon of yeast. There it goes. And that's it. And then we can just pop that right back in the fridge. And so what I'm doing here is putting all this stuff together. Now, is there anything else I want to put into there? What would be nice for morning bread? I've already got something sweet. I've got the cinnamon. No, I'm good. Okay. So the key to this, and I switch this around. So what is it you like about higurashi? Maybe I can give you a recommendation. So this is my bread machine, which is what the camera was on a second ago. I'm going to put the pan in there very carefully because I don't want to mess up the very specific ordering of things. If I get the yeast on the top into the water on the bottom, everything starts to proof and the bread is no longer useful. So I now need to prep this for tomorrow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 30. So this needs to be ready in 11 and a half hours. Yep. And so I'm setting it for that. Light crust, yeah. 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, 9 and a half. Shoot. Whew. Almost screwed that one up. 9 and a half. That makes more sense. 9 and a half hours. This will be done and baked and ready to come out of here. That's reasonable as like the light crust and we're going to start. So I'll wake up tomorrow morning with a loaf of honey cinnamon bread, which is pretty awesome. And meanwhile, those brownies are baking, and I can see here. We have about 12 minutes to go on those. And again, that's kind of why I wanted to do that first, because that can go in kind of any time. But now I'm already halfway done with the brownies. And let me just throw this stuff into here so they're soaking in it, and clean up the worst of the spills, and I'll come back and talk to you guys. There we go. All right. Yeah, it's Index and then Railgun. Although I think it's Index 2 comes after Railgun, if I recall correctly. The building tension and the backstories. With Higurashi, were you there for the darkness, if you will? So like, and I mean this, honestly. I'm not trying to, put you in a trap of you like that dark, disgusting stuff. I don't care. But was it that kind of dark nature of the backstories that really sucked you in? Is it kind of people being having to go through great trauma, if you will? Because if so, I have the anime for you on that one. Or was it like more the horror of it? Was it the sort of crawling modern horror of normal people with this sort of weird thing hanging over them? Because that's a little different. The mystery, gotcha. Then I would definitely recommend Boogiepop Phantom, which we're watching right now on Smoke and Mirrors, because it is very much set in a very strange little world. Although it is modern Japan, but things are different. Something's going on, and it does not explain what's going on. You get little bits and pieces throughout, and you can piece it together if you're going to watch closely. But Boogiepop Phantom would certainly fit that. So give that a try. It might not be your speed. Some other things that are sort of weird. One of the nice things about anime is a lot of anime have mystery and backstories. Obviously, Higurashi, not so much. Obviously, Higurashi more than the vast majority, and many are very minor. So let's see. You could do something. Okay, so you've been watching Boogiepop. That's cool. Yeah, they are very weirdly toned, and that is part of the plot. Like, that is intentional. So, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like, what was the thing that they're talking about doing another movie? Oh, gosh. And the guy's saying it's going to have to be basically a reimagining. You can't be a straight sequel. I can't remember what it is. It's some sci-fi movie. It was kind of like, really? But yeah, and there is that issue that eventually it's kind of like, okay, and now we're moving forward another 10 years. Oh, it's the problem the Gundam had. You kind of can only move forward so much until it becomes a very difficult thing to follow, But yes, ordering is complicated. And of course, further complicated in anime because you're adapting multiple things. This is adapting the original light novels. This is adapting the manga. This is an original story. Yeah. So if you think that's bad, try the Lodos franchise, which is a series of basically Dungeons and Dragons fantasy stories in the anime universe, or in anime. And my gosh, they've set in all sorts of different periods in that story, and some are spin-offs and some aren't. And it's really complicated. And there are kind of multiple mini franchises within that. So Legend of Castania is an OVA and a TV series set in that world. Record of Lodos War is set in that world. Rune Soldier Louis is technically set in that world. So it's complicated. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see about Knights of Sidonia season 3. We'll probably have to wait for that. Last I checked, season 2 gets fairly far up into the manga. So I'm betting they're gonna have to wait a little while further for season 3. Again, I'm not sure where they are, but as I recall, that's kind of the position they are right now, where they've got to pause for a little bit to catch up with the manga. Rambo. There's the not Rambo. I'm thinking Japanese pronunciation. Fast and Furious. Yeah, it goes all over the place. I think it's really kind of amazing that the Fast and Furious crew have managed to make this huge franchise out of fast cars. Basically, it's and I mean no disrespect. I am legitimately impressed that they have taken a sort of a one-off movie. And nothing wrong with the movie, but in 7 movies, that's it takes a lot of work to figure out how to continue that on and find new stories and weave storylines and so forth. It's a cool achievement, and obviously people love it. They go and watch it. So very, very cool. So I don't know if you guys have been watching the San Diego Comic-Con coverage. There's lots of cool things coming out of there. Of course, very little anime related, unfortunately. That's what we have Anime Expo for, basically. I think the Star Wars panel is now or soon. Yeah, I think it's either happening now or something along those lines. Sort of skimming through. I'm sure we'll see tons of tweets once the information there goes out. That's interesting. I might be seeing a Chobits cosplay next to an R2-D2. That's cool. And unfortunately, I can't share the link because of how YouTube is. Yeah, the Star Wars panel is just starting shortly. apparently. They're calling it the Star Killer base. That's a nice callback. That's pretty cool. Simon Pegg is in this new Star Wars movie. I wonder if he'll be an engineer. That'd be pretty cool. I've heard rumors that the guy playing Deadpool will be walking around San Diego Comic-Con in his Deadpool costume. So that's pretty cool. Oh, Flowers of Evil. Okay, yep, that's another good one for that. Actually, let me pull up my list of anime. So while I had you guys here and we're chatting like this, which is very helpful, what can we do to be more helpful to you guys? Because we're spinning up some new shows and some new stuff, and we kind of want to know, like, is the news useful to you? Do you guys watch the news shows? Do you want more reviews? Do you want more analysis? Kind of where would you like us to go? That would be helpful. And also, more specifically, we'd like to build some encapsulated set of videos that we can charge people for, sort of a small charge. And I'm talking the way concept, but as an example, imagine like a $20 complete guide to the Gundam franchise, where we talk about all sorts of, all the different shows, and we analyze them and kind of explain how all that goes on. It's that kind of concept that we're thinking about. And we release some of those videos for free, and then we'd say, hey, if you want to see all of this stuff, lay down a few bucks, and we'll give you access to a whole bunch of videos on this one topic. So what would kind of be helpful to you guys? What would be kind of what would you watch or pay for, really? That'd be helpful. Yeah, I've been trying to follow the Comic-Con news over the past couple of days and tweet about it on the Geek Spectrum Twitter account. So reviews would be cool. That's good to know, Frogger. Good old Frogger. I might play some Frogger tonight, now that I see that there. I'm now skimming through my my anime collection page to look for other things that have a kind of Higurashi feel. I've heard good things about Ergo Proxy, but I've only seen episode 1, and so it wasn't clear to me just how weird that would be. Fractal actually has some interesting mystery stuff. Oh, hey, Mr. Artist. Good to see you. Thanks for all the kind words on Facebook. Glad to hear you like the news show. That's helpful. Let me just kind of skim quick through anything else Comic-Con wise. So apparently there's a at the panel there's a behind the scenes video which is now available online somewhere. So I'm sure if you look for Star Wars behind the scenes or Star Wars The Force Awakens behind the scenes, you'll find it, thanks to Google. Trails. Ooh. News and news. Trails, big betrayals. Well, obviously, Gare Zero would be one of the big ones. Gare Zero has, it's all about a betrayal. That is the central storyline of Gare Zero. There's a lot of that in Gundam, sort of woven through. Betrayal. You might really like Infinite Revias. So that's Infinite Revias RYV. Oh, it's a hard one to tell. Teenagers on a space station with no adult supervision, and they all have to kind of keep things going. It's less about a lot of direct betrayals and more about the threat of betrayals constantly, about who is going to crack and screw everything up for everyone else. And so, like, there are some betrayals in there. But it's a constant theme. Okay. So now we check on those brownies. So the sort of the history stuff. That's good to know. That's helpful. Yeah, I'd like to do more of those. I might show you guys tonight a sneak preview of a video I just finished. Actually, 2 videos just finished. So I do have some of those coming. I'm glad to say. Okay, so I'm going to grab. I'll make this actually visible. Pull this out. And I'm going to try it. Let's see, so as you can see, there's pretty much nothing on the end of that. There's a little bit of brownie. But that's pretty darn clean. You can go in there for a little while longer, and I think actually it will. I'm going to give that another minute or 2, maybe 3 minutes. There's a little bit of brownie on the edge of that. See if we can get that into focus. Can we? No, too much stuff back there. But you can see kind of how on the tip there's a little bit of brown, just a little tiny bit, a little extra. Cool powers and tournaments. Yeah, that I have less knowledge of, sadly. But, so yes, actually, you want a shonen series with betrayals. Rurouni Kenshin. That is Rurouni Kenshin right there. And again, I'll type that in. Maze. It's been a while since I've seen Maze. That's an interesting little OVA. Crazy Limited Edition Call of Duty. Yeah. Amiibo News. Prototype Mewtwo Pokemon. All right, yeah, for Amiibo. The convention, thanks for asking, Mr. Artist. Unfortunately, the convention probably is not going to happen as anticipated. I think we're still at like $300 out of the $5,000 we need. Let me double check on that. That was as of the last time I checked. And so, let's see here. Otaku Brain Trust. Yeah, $350 with 5 days to go, and we need $5,000. So it looks like the Kickstarter isn't going to fund. So we'll probably have to go back and rethink that. We'll probably, I would like to do it, but we may have to do it maybe next year, something along those lines. I really don't want to try to give people. I don't want to try to redo the Kickstarter and then do try to do the convention with that short of a time span between now and the convention in February. I know we're still many months out, but it's just too many things can happen between, or that's pushing it a little too close to the time where I get the money in and then make sure everyone's going. So we'll probably have to just say, okay, rethink. So unfortunately, that also means we're just going to have to basically say, okay, we need to find other people to talk to. We need to do more promotion ahead of time. So when the Kickstarter launches, we're on more podcasts. People are blogging about us. People with a lot of reach, we need to kind of reach them first so the Kickstarter kind of has a chance. Unfortunately, we just don't have the reach as it is, as we are, to make that Kickstarter happen. So again, we'll retrench, we'll rethink it, we'll see about a different way of doing it. But probably it's not going to happen anytime soon, which is fine. It's a cool idea that's just not going to happen just yet, right? And it's taught us a lot about what to expect, basically, out of this kind of concept. But yeah, so mean, you do have kind of betrayals in Dragon Ball Z. Some of the main characters do kind of betray things a little bit back and forth. Yu Yu Hakusho, I don't know. I haven't seen enough to know about that. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly a shonen series of shonen powers. Yeah, you're right, Mr. Artist. Putting on a convention is a lot of work. So we want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row to be able to do that well, you know, and not mess anything up. So the fact that it didn't fund says, okay, good. We're not going to jump into something that would potentially mess everyone up. We don't want to bring a bunch of folks in for a convention and not have it happen correctly. So we'd rather have everything right. All right, so now I'm pulling out those brownies. They look essentially identical to how they looked before. I know, Mr. Artist, you have a lot more experience than we do about conventions. All right, let me grab. I'm actually going to use 2 of these racks. And put them out on those racks to cool for a little while, and then I'll pop them into containers. One important thing, one helpful thing, if you can cut it fairly early, then it's a little easier for the knife to slice through than if you wait until it's completely cooled. So I'm probably going to cut that in a little bit. Wouldn't mind having a brownie and some milk. Well, I might just have some milk. Okay. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Sort of a nightly thing. Okay, yeah, the surprising power for the hero. That's a little more interesting. Often, it's hard to keep up, right? It's hard to have a power be surprising without having it be just kind of random. One Piece? With a mini fridge. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty crazy. But then, I mean, it's Call of Duty. It's the Star Wars of video games, if you will. It's the premier franchise. If people are willing to buy it, hey. And if anime limited editions can come with all the crazy stuff they come with, here's a pair of panties. Ooh. Wow, 1992. That's pretty cool. All right. Let me see if I can put all this stuff in the fridge. Or in the dishwasher. I can manage it. Yeah, I'll find a way. Oh, we'll find a way. So if I can get this cleaned up, I'm just going to get I'd like to get these dishes rinsed out with the dishwasher. Then it's done, right? No good to keep these things in the sink. I never keep dishes in the sink, I never do that. That would be just crazy. Overnight? No, I wouldn't do that. All right. And the thing is, I mean, basically like 4 dishes in here. That's a little silly. So I'll just wipe off the large majority of that. I have been watching some anime recently, actually, including some recent anime. I want to provide some quick thoughts on that. So I watched Roka, the Braves of the Five Flowers, I think it's called. Roka, which is really cool. It's sort of like the Hakenden, so it's several warriors who are all chosen to fight off this thing. You know, kind of a classic concept. But it's an Aztec-themed world. So instead of medieval fantasy, it's like Aztec fantasy. Really interesting. Neat visual style. So I'm loving that. In fact, I kind of like to run a role-playing game in that world. Let's see here. What else did I watch? I watched an episode of Punchline. Not my kind of show. Horny teen has to keep from being horny. Which I don't know. Again, that's the kind of adolescent concept that just I've kind of grown out of. It can be funny if done exactly well, but as a central thing that everyone will find this funny, not so much. Shuffle. Yeah. Well, and I think what's the one with the girls with the collars, the metal collars around their necks. Sora something. I can't remember the name. But it's the one with the girls who are all kind of slaves to the main character, and one's like a definite lowly, and the one's a sort of big-breasted girl. And the end credits famously include flying panties, so panties flying like they're birds. I think that box set in Japan had panties. It came with it, which again, no big shock. But just, okay. At least they're not used panties, like the vending machine. Let's see here. Yeah, I heard there's going to be a new season of Heroes. 1982, that's amazing. Yeah, I guess if you like betrayals and you like sort of dark stuff happening to people, Madoka Magica would be a good choice. Yes, Heaven's Lost Property. That's it, Heaven's Lost Property. Thank you, Kino, and welcome. Kino travels the world on docking motorcycle Hermes. All right, let me just run back upstairs so I can plug this in and recharge it, then we'll come back down in a little bit and cut into those brownies. Now we go through the darkness up the hallway of anime cells, which is also dark, but that's okay, and into the library, which is mostly dark because I turned off the lights in here. I'll have to change that. What do I think about changes in anime companies over the year? Interesting question. I think the companies have generally grown up, if you will. And that's not disrespect. I mean that they've gotten more reasonable about what kind of things they can expect. Where'd the power thing go? There it is. They don't pour a lot of money into shows that have very little likelihood of actually going anywhere. Sorry, 1 second, guys. I need to grab something. This is so silly. Gotta log into an app on my phone to turn on my lights. Let's see here. There we go. Why is there a Home Depot thing there? That's weird. Why was that linking to Home Depot? That's bizarre. Oh, wait. What was that doing? So my lights app had a little Home Depot icon into it. Dragon Ball Super. Yeah, I haven't checked out Dragon Ball Super yet. So I think that, so it used to be that anime companies would pour a lot of money into shows that had limited appeal, and I think we're seeing more reasonable allocation of resources.
And I think we're seeing a more reasonable number of anime licensed. There's just only so many things that it makes sense to license over here. So I think we're getting that kind of reasonable. Now, obviously, I'd love to see everything licensed and released over here, but that's just kind of not reasonable. So I think that's a good thing. So yeah, going back to shows I watched recently. So yeah, those, and then Classroom Crisis. I really like Classroom Crisis. The basic concept is it's set in the pretty far future, actually, where the solar system has been colonized by humanity, and they are fighting. The main characters are all in a special class, high schoolers, of course. So they're kind of a special engineering class, if you will. So they are, I don't know what you'd call it, but if there's a sort of a high school version of being in, what do they call it in school when you're in special classes? You're sort of doing more difficult work than the average student. I never had to do that because I didn't go to school for junior high or high school. So honors, I guess it's kind of like honors. Yeah, so they're basically honors students in this sort of honors class. And it's in a future where corporations are so massive that they fund schools. So all of these students are kind of sort of technically employees of the company that owns this high school, that built the high school. And the basic premise is that because they are honor students working on all sorts of advanced stuff, they are spending huge amounts of money on these various projects, and the classroom is likely to be shut down because it's costing too much money. So they had to kind of prove themselves to a very annoyed company representative, which is an interesting concept, partly because it's about exceptional students, which you don't see that much in anime. Everyone has to be average, if you will. So seeing that it's about particularly smart and bright kids is an interesting concept, and also set in kind of that neat future. So yeah, that's a cool one. I'm looking forward to that one. Let's see here. I did hear about the new Gundam coming out. Of course, we don't know what it is, just that they're going to announce it next week. So I'm all ears, but the fact that they just said, we're going to announce it next week, I'm like, okay. I really wanted to talk about it during Horizons this week, but I don't cover pre-announcements when they just say, we're going to tell you about a show in a while. I'm like, there's nothing to say. So, my favorite Eva parody, oh gosh, there was one I saw a long time ago, and I didn't get a chance to remember the name of it. It was a parody of the first episode of Evangelion TV show. It was basically a resub. Oh, I have to dig that out. Let's see here. I mean, it was made a long time ago, years and years. Let's see here. Yeah, there's the live TV show of Death Note. What shows do I watch outside of anime? Good question. So, sort of related to anime, I watch a show called Japanology, which is a documentary series about Japanese culture and society. Very informative. It's available on YouTube and torrents. So you can watch them. I think most of them are available on YouTube. I think pretty much all of them are available on torrents. It is a public, basically an NPR or PBS style show in Japan. And it's all in English. Like the presenter is actually British. And he's talking in English the whole time through it, and all of the Japanese interviews with Japanese people are dubbed into English within the show. So, although I think some of them are, no, they're all dubbed. So that's cool, and you get a lot of information. So you get these half-hour episodes about a particular aspect of Japanese culture, and so it might be bunraku puppet shows. It might be rain. As in water from the sky, and different ways that rain has worked its way into various aspects of Japanese culture. Very interesting. I also have been watching Killjoys, the recent sci-fi sort of Cowboy Bebop-ish live action sci-fi show and enjoying that. I've only seen the first episode, and I'm really looking forward to watching the next couple. I think they're up to episode 4 tonight. Episode 4 dropped tonight. So that's a neat show. Also looking at, I also watched the first episode of Dark Matter, which is the other sci-fi show about a bunch of, well, I don't want to spoil it, but that's a more serious show, a little more high concept. But both of those are interesting. I would argue that Dark Matter has the more powerful acting, while Killjoys is more fun. And again, it's more kind of Firefly, Cowboy Bebop style. What else am I watching? Let's see here. Not much, really. A friend of mine gave me a copy, or loaned me a copy of, what is it called? The IT Crowd. It was a British comedy from 2009, I think. Let's see here. Was that 2006? Excuse me. So late aughts series. I haven't really started that yet, though. So I'm looking forward to that. Other than anime, what else have I been watching? Killjoys, Dark Matter. That's about it. I watch Mystery Science Theater often. So that's my way of relaxing. Sorry about that. Is watching Mystery Science Theater 3000, because that's just always funny. Although I am getting to the point where I've watched every episode multiple times. So it's kind of like there's not much new for me to re-experience, even with 10 seasons to watch. What do you guys watch outside of anime? What interests and excites you guys? There's probably something else, but I'm not thinking about it. I don't actually watch much in the way of stuff. I do. What are some recent movies I've watched? Again, not much. Well, I keep track of such things. Yeah, The Holy Mountain, which is this really weird movie from the 70s. Barbarella, the very odd 70s sci-fi movie. The original Solaris, which is a Russian science fiction movie from the 70s. Very slow. Very slow. So it's like 4 hours long. So it's something that you probably will want to, I mean, generally speaking, I don't like do other things while I'm watching a movie or a TV show. You know, I'm not going to be knitting or tweeting or whatever while I'm watching something in general. Solaris is a good show, a good movie to be doing something else while you're watching it. You know. Oh, cool, War Fanatic. Is that I think I saw the first episode of that. The American Revolution show. But like the spies during the American Revolution, that was really interesting. Let's see here. Zombeaver. Nice. Yeah, I'd like to watch the Hollywood remake of Solaris now and just kind of compare it. I'm curious. I also watched Aelita, the Princess of the Moon, I think it's called. Aelita, Queen of Mars, which is the first science fiction film made in Russia. It was made in, I think, 1928. Only the 20s. Yeah, I mean, so the original Solaris is a movie that I'm glad I watched, but I don't know that I'd call myself a fan of his work. I'm certainly interested in it. And he's certainly a fascinating director. But it's one of those things where I think he's going to be one of those guys where I can appreciate his stuff, but I'm probably not going to track down all this stuff. We'll see. Yeah, Zombeavers sounds pretty awesome. And to answer your question, or to cover that topic, Liquidus, yes, English is a second language in Japan. It is a mandatory subject in middle and high schools. So students have to take classes in English in Japan. not so other languages. I mean, obviously, other languages are offered, but yes, and then that's been true for a couple of decades now. So just learning Portuguese. Well, so the Portuguese were the only country allowed to trade with Japan for a long time. That was centuries ago, but they were the only ones allowed in. But I don't know why that would be a big thing now. It's interesting. The Mirror, interesting. Tarkovsky's film The Mirror. I'm intrigued. So there's always something more to watch, though. So that's kind of cool. I am enjoying, now that I've seen some of these Russian films, I like to go back and find a few more, but also more importantly, I'd like to find some other, international science fiction films. So live action science fiction not made in America, Russia, or Japan for that matter. I've seen a fair amount of Japanese science fiction. I mean, certainly not a huge amount, but I've seen some. But I mean, I have no experience with science fiction. I mean, I've seen, I guess, a few British science fiction films, Day of the Triffids, things like that. But oh, interesting. You have intrigued me, Game Escape. I may have to track down that movie. Aelita is weird because it was made like the year after the October Revolution. So there is this completely in-your-face message for socialism. I guess it was communism. Socialism. Sorry. At the end of the film, like the big climax has this like commercial for socialism, like right there in the climax. And I have to wonder how much that was kind of tacked on, because the rest of the movie doesn't really feel like it's leading up to that. There is a social revolution in the film, but it doesn't really feel like they were kind of building to that kind of story. But yes, and it's interesting seeing these films that are very much about Russia and the revolution and what it was like living in, or not just the revolution, but about living in that kind of a state and living in that kind of a society and what it was like. Interesting Russian science fiction film called Kindzadza, Kindza, which is in which a couple of Russian guys are teleported to a weird alien sci-fi world. And it's clearly making some comparisons to life in Soviet Russia, which is fascinating. That's true for They've actually had anime merchandise at Hot Topic for a very long time. I say very long time, but for years and years, they've had anime stuff there. Sailor Moon style T-shirts and stuff like that, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, not a lot generally. Doesn't take over the store, but yeah. But yeah, they definitely do. It's been there for quite a while, and they got some interesting stuff. Well, that's the interesting thing, Game Escape, is that there are a lot of those films that more or less critique or meditate, if you will, on the socialist experience. And you can see that they're saying, yeah, this isn't awesome. This is not wonderful. There's a wonderful little animated film called Film, which is about, I think, 20 minutes long, and it's about these various animated characters trying to make a movie in socialist Russia, and how difficult that is and bureaucratic, and all the problems, and getting the agreement from the film board and all that stuff. It's really interesting. So it is fascinating to see how those topics are broached in film and how they're covered. How did you stumble across The Mirror, Game Escape? Excuse me, I got a bit of a Excuse me. Ah. What's that, you guys? One sec. Sorry about that. Got some buildup in there that suddenly decided to escape. College film class. Oh, Birdemic. Yeah. Birdemic is one of the bad ones. I haven't seen it all the way through, but I've seen enough clips of it that I'm like, that's impressively bad. That's a failure on so many levels. I mean, I still think that Skydivers is the worst film ever made. I'm gonna go on record for that one. But yeah, Skydivers is a movie that's about where a significant portion of the movie is stock footage of people skydiving. That's pretty bad, and the rest of it is just kind of random stuff happening. It's amazing. What book do I want to see turned into an anime? Dune. I think Dune would be a perfect anime subject. Failing that, well, Lensman, actually, it was one, but it already has been turned into anime. But maybe like a Lensman TV series would be nice. Well, there was one, though. So, yeah. Let's see. I'll have to track down that Lensman TV series, actually. What other book would I like to see turned into an anime? Good question for the chat room. What book would you like to see turned into an anime? This isn't quite a book, but I'd love to see a Doctor Who anime. Feels like something that would fit very well. And of course, there was that amazing animated Doctor Who thing, the anime style Doctor Who thing that came out a year or two ago on YouTube. Failing that, I don't know, Dune for me would be pretty high on the list. It's so weird and it's so visually striking. It just needs to go there. Yeah, Wild Wild World of Batwoman, that definitely is also a very bad movie. That's down there. That's pretty low in the list. I'm now spinning around to look at my sci-fi and fantasy collection. Come on. Sorry. Chair stuck. Battlefield Earth. No, just kidding. Murakami's novels. That would be interesting. Definitely. Question is, what would really fit anime? I'm thinking Boogiepop. Oh wait. Journey to the West. Oh wait. There's some fantasy that would do rather well. The Prydain novels, the Black Cauldron, which Disney famously made into that would work. Ooh, it would work really well. The M.A.R. Barker's Tecumel book. It was actually originally a role-playing universe, but several novels were written in that. It's sort of an Aztec Mayan crossed with an Indian subcontinent culture. Very different, and it has very the culture is different enough. Fashions, society are so different that it's something that would be very difficult to stage in live action. It's just this big, complex world. Ooh, John Carter of Mars. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Artist. That would be an excellent choice. Sherlock Holmes would be an interesting anime. I wouldn't disagree there. Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. Of course, that would have to be like a 300 episode TV show, but still. That also be good. Actually, the Redwall novels. There was a British animated adaptation, but I don't think they did the art was kind of stiff. Or it was stiff and very simplistic. And I think the Japanese studio could do that really well, given all of the various Japanese anthropomorphic anime series over time. I think that would really do nicely. But now you mentioned John Carter, yeah, that's a no-brainer. And then you can also do some of the nudity. Famously in the John Carter novels, everyone goes naked on Mars. Of course, that's early 20th century. Naked doesn't necessarily mean literally no clothing ornamentation. So you can get away with something along the lines of like a loincloth. But the implication is that everyone's wearing very, very little clothing. So I think you could really do that very well. Boxcar Kids, yeah. Magic Tree House was adapted into a movie. What else? I think kids' stories would be good for adapting into anime because you can do some of that mild fantasy a little bit more easily, like Studio Ghibli does. The Cat Returns is like any of those things, or Whisper of the Heart is like any given good young adult story. What else would be a good one? Ooh, Werner Vinge, Fire Upon the Sky. That's got some really neat, a lot of weird aliens, big storylines. Good one. But yeah, Dune's always been my favorite novel, and I keep coming back to that one. Yeah, I think I'd have to stick with that one. Anything else obvious? I'll tell you a manga I would love to see adapted into anime is Pluto, which is Naoki Urasawa's Astro Boy story. Urasawa, famously the guy who did Monster and 20th Century Boys. He did this 8-volume manga Astro Boy story, and I'd love to see that adapted into an anime. Yeah, Jurassic Park is anime. That would fit. That would do well. Yeah, for that. I'd love to see, excuse me, again, just getting a stuffy nose. I'd love to see anime handle fantasy. One of the things anime does well is tending to take a slightly different approach to anime. So you can get different settings than you do in traditional fantasy. So seeing something different in the world would be nice. Native American style to the world, or a an African style to a world instead of standard medieval fantasy. What anime would I like to see turned into a video game? I don't know. I don't play video games. I just don't have the experience with modern video games to know what would be fun. And then, as Nakuda says, most popular anime in Japan already are video games. They have either inspired or are adapted from video games. It's a good point. I don't know. I guess my problem is I don't find video games particularly fun. So I don't know anything that would make a video game fun, because it's kind of like, how would you make it into I don't know, something boring? I have a weird, messed up head in that way. So let's see here. You know what else anime would be good at? Lovecraft. Cthulhuoid horror. I think anime would be very good at. And then you get back to the original Lovecraft style, where you don't see the creature. You don't see Cthulhu, because that would drive you mad. Kimiguri Orange Road. Into 80s anime, what are some suggestions? So Hank Hill, what kind of shows do you like? I mean, what kind of genres do you like? Romance, sci-fi, action, horror, mecha. The 80s were huge on mecha. I have Kimiguri Orange Road, but I haven't watched it, so I'm not too familiar with it, besides the very basic concept of core there. So if I can get a sense for what kind of shows you like and what kind of genres you like, I can give you some recommendations for 80s anime. There's lots of good stuff out there. But again, it really depends on genre. The other problem with video games for me is that I find violence boring. So, I mean, I can play with and play games that have violence, but when that's the core gameplay mechanic, I find it dull. So if I wanted to adapt an anime in a video game, I'd have to find a non-violent video game concept. It's like a visual novel or something. So I don't know. A visual novel of, gosh. I'm gonna have to have imagining a visual novel. Excuse me. Sorry. What's going up there? Well, I recognize that not all video games focus on violence, but the vast majority of them do. I mean, outside of puzzle games. And I'm assuming we don't want anime adapted to puzzle games. You can certainly do that, but and certainly most of the anime there. Well, yeah, but JRPGs are all violence based, and so tactical RPGs. You have to do violence upon various creatures to move forward in a JRPG. So. Yeah, I just don't find that interesting. Random encounter. Oh, yay. Honestly, the first random encounter I had in Final Fantasy VII, I wanted to turn the console off. I was just like, this does nothing for me. This is pointless. But I think I see what you're saying, War Fanatic, where adapting an anime into a Western style video game. Interesting question. I don't know. Again, I don't really play Western style video games. Yeah, lots of anime are inherently violent, but most of the anime I watch are not. And there's enough variation on anime that they are not. That most of them are not inherently violent. And those that are violent portray violence as a last resort. In most video games, violence is the first and only resort, and that's kind of the problem I have. Generally speaking, in anime, characters try to find would rather. In most anime, the characters are forced to a violent response. They have to fight the person, otherwise they will die. But it's a last resort. Whereas in most video games, the first thing you do is kill something, and that just I think it kind of bores me. And it may be true that violent confrontation is a structural principle in most modern popular media. That's why I don't watch most popular media. But there's also a lot of non-violent media out there. Video games are just really stuck in focusing on violence. It is a central thing. And I mean, I'm not, you get really sensitive about this. I'm not saying that video games are bad for doing this. I understand why that is. It is a very easy thing. It creates a simple, obvious conflict. But I just find it boring. It's a really dull way of. It's the most obvious and most simplistic way of creating conflict. Again, compare that to, say, Full Metal Panic, where there is violent conflict. There is lots of stuff in there, but the goal is to protect someone. The goal is to avoid violence where possible. And the series is very clearly about that. Compared to, say, The Last of Us, which, again, I haven't played, but from what I've seen and folks are saying, there is constant violent conflict, and it's like, okay, I get the point. I get the point there. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about The Last of Us. I'm sure it's a brilliant game, but it's a very different approach. You can't find a non-violent anime-style dating sim? I can't think of a single violent anime dating sim. Canon, Air, Clannad. Every dating sim I've ever played has no significant violence. I mean, a girl might whack a guy upside the head or something. But yeah, I find, anyway, this is probably going to lose me subscribers if I go too far on. But it's one of those things where I find that it's wide. Like, the one video game I did play recently all the way through was I'm gonna forget that, Monument Valley, which is basically a puzzle game. But there's no violence. You're just trying to find your way through and figure out how to get from one place to another. And that interested me. And there was a story. There was a backstory that was explained over the course of doing that. So again, if all video games like Monument Valley, that would appeal to me. That would be interesting. That's why I loved point and click adventure games. No violence necessarily. And when it's there, it can be mild or moderate or not, but it's not central to the gameplay. Oh, I disagree with you there, Gamescape. I think video games can be a good way to deliver stories. You are certainly okay. So I do agree with you. Video games are not a great way to deliver stories in the same way that films and novels do. But I think you can definitely tell stories with video games. It's just a completely different medium. It's a different kind of story. You're telling emergent stories, not preconceived stories. So, the story I tell about a video game is about the things that I do in the video game, not so much about the plot twist of the video game, although that's certainly part of it. but it's a very different kind of experience. And I completely agree with you, for War Fanatic. Violent confrontation is often necessary. My problem is that video games require violent confrontation every 5 minutes. And that I just find dull. And again, I'm generalizing. So, yeah, I find it, to me, again, to me, story is what happened. A game cannot fail to tell a story. There's always a story occurring, whether or not that is a story that the game intends to tell or not. But story always emerges, particularly in games. To me, the fun and excitement, there has to be something fun and exciting in there. And when the fun and excitement is killing things, I don't find that fun and exciting. And when the mechanics are all about killing things, again, I don't find that fun and exciting. Which again, I'm please understand, I'm not disagreeing. I'm presenting my own perspective on that. I'm not saying that you should not have that perspective. I'm, that's cool. That's your approach to things. That's fine. I'm just kind of saying where I come from. So yeah, to me, story is kind of in there. Oh, Tetris has a story. There's absolutely story in Tetris. It is a story you tell about how you almost got to this end of a level and you got this one piece that didn't come down correctly. That's a story. That is the story that Tetris that emerged in Tetris. These things were coming at you and you did these things to affect that. That's the story. It's very abstract, but it's a story. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that game escape. And I mean, I'm kind of on the middle ground in that whole video games as art perspective, where I think that belittling video games doesn't really get us anywhere. I think video games are a perfectly valid form of expression. The videos can be art. On the other hand, I think a lot of people defend video games very vociferously and put them up as sort of, equivalent to a Rembrandt. I think that's a little overstated the case. Gundam absolutely has violent confrontation and consistently presents that as a bad thing that should be avoided as much as possible. Gundam is, and particularly Tomino's Gundam series, constantly have this constant drumbeat of violence as a dumb option, as something that often you have to do, but as a really problematic solution. And the violence should be avoided. It's why Turn A Gundam is the way it is. Turn A Gundam is very much about Tomino making a Gundam series that does not reward desires for big war style conflict in an anime series. Turn A, avoids the big spectacle combats that you got in previous Gundams, because his point is that those big spectacle combats are horrible for the people involved. They are immensely destructive and bad. So, that is a setting for talking about physical confrontation, and that's a great example of where that's a theme. It can absolutely be a theme, but when the actual experience of it is kill this thing, kill this thing, kill this thing, destroy this thing, destroy this thing, I just find that a very dull and simplistic task in a game. And games where you build, games where you explore are much more interesting. Would Gundam have succeeded commercially? That is an unknowable question. I agree. From what I've seen of Victory Gundam, well, actually, I disagree. Victory Gundam is not nothing but violence and death. I got 8 episodes in, and I know it gets much worse later. But there's no death in the first 8 episodes of Victory Gundam. So on that score, no. But also, again, to my earlier point, that violence and death is a drumbeat about how bad that is. That is exactly the point of the show. Tomino is trying to beat into the viewer's skull that this big spectacle of violence is horribly painful. He's trying to make it as painful as possible. Whereas in many video games, violence and death rewards you with more gameplay and higher levels and better skill and the ability to do more stuff. So maybe Violent Robot Confrontation shelved those series. Again, that's unknowable. And what sells is not the subject here. That is not the issue. I mean, are we really saying that everyone has to maximize sales? That is the goal? Maximizing sales is dangerous for everyone involved, actually. Ask Peter Drucker, management. I've been rereading Drucker's management book. It's sitting around here somewhere. And it's one of his themes is that maximizing profit is actually a really bad idea for any business. He was one of the big management gurus of the 20th century. By that logic, then oil companies should suck all the oil out of the ground and destroy everything because that makes the most money. I don't think it's a reasonable approach. And yes, there's certainly something about fighting robots that appeals to people, but again, it can be done in a way that's interesting, in a way that is. And to be clear, I'm holding up Gundam as an example of how to do it right. I am agreeing with you that yes, it's hugely successful, and yes, that violent conflict is a central part of that. But the way the violent conflict is phrased is fundamentally different than the way it is in the average video game in America. That violence is portrayed as and consistently shown as a very bad thing, as a very problematic thing, as something that people should not do. Whereas in the average video game, it is how you get better. It is how you progress. And that's the problem. And yeah, and again, I'm saying, yeah, I mean, you are proving my point, Game Escape. Gundam is far and away the biggest mecha franchise, and probably the biggest anime franchise ever. And well, that may not be. No, not the biggest anime franchise ever. That would probably be Crayon Shin-chan. But it is probably the biggest anime related franchise, shall we say, in terms of anime and manga and so forth and so on. I mean, again, depends on how you put that, but certainly one of the biggest. And it has a consistently anti-war theme. I think that is a great indication that that's an important, an important thing. That people are responding to that. That is a great way of telling a story by presenting violence as problematic, as opposed to an awesome thing to do to other people. Or not necessarily an awesome thing to do to people, but as the way you progress in the story. As the only way to do anything. I mean, heroes in Gundam consistently feel bad about the people they kill. They feel trauma for what they do. And that is presented as not a bad thing, as a good human thing to do. The characters in Call of Duty, and again, I don't have a lot of experience with video games, but the characters in the average video game don't have a lot of angst over the people they kill, or the things they destroy, or the cars they blow up, or whatever. That's what I'm talking about. Sometimes they do, but yeah, Robotech and Macross is a great example of a franchise that also is very anti-war, pro-military, but very anti-war. And it's consistently talking about how horribly damaging and destructive that war is, and it's one of the biggest mecha franchises in anime history. So yeah, I think that works. Yeah, anime in general is much more often presents violence as problematic, often necessary but problematic than in America. Are giant robots versus monsters violence like in Pacific Rim a bad thing? Depends on how you look at it. I mean, the monsters in Pacific Rim are shown as being basically non-sentient forces of nature, that they are just going to destroy humanity unless somebody stops it, and they are effectively evil. They're, stereotypical Nazis. So I think that violence is shown as, a reasonable thing. And so that's a more simplistic thing. But I think it's a great example of how Pacific Rim is a more simplistic film. Pacific Rim is, here's how we are using these things to save humanity. And it is, it's violence, but it's a different type of violence, if you will. And as a result, the movie is it has to find its depth and complexity in other ways, through the relationship with Mako, through the relationships with the other pilot characters, things like that. But the underlying violence is there because you have to keep humanity alive. Interesting point, Game Escape. I disagree that anime as a genre foregrounds violence. First off, anime is a medium, not a genre. Partly because there's so much anime that's non-violent. If you're only looking at shonen series, then yes, it foregrounds violence. But there are so many romance series, there are so many kids series that do not have violence in them. You look at Crayon Shin-chan, you look at Doraemon, you look at all the shoujo series come out every year. All of the romance series, the harem anime that come out every year, where there's no violence in them. Look at all the comedies that are fundamentally non-violent. I don't think that as a whole, if you look at the number of minutes, if you watched all the minutes of all the anime being broadcast right now on Japanese television, you're certainly going to see a lot of violence. I certainly agree there. But I think as a whole, there's, it's not 90% violence. Well, but War Fanatic, Giran Zabi is also shown to be Hitler. I mean, that's not being pro-war. Girin is very clearly shown to be insane. That is not a pro-war message. There's nothing pro-war about that. And in fact, the whole point of that is that Girin is so insane he needs to be stopped. But that doesn't make it pro. Well, again, I think you're getting a little confused about what pro-war and anti-war mean, or in what I mean in this context. Gundam is saying that violent resistance to certain things are often necessary, but that violence, period, is destructive and more destructive than you want it to be, right? So yes, people like Girin have to be stopped, but that any conflict in which that happens is going to be horribly destructive. And it's, I mean, as a result, it's complicated. And I mean, it's why in Tomino's series, there are still wars and there are still conflicts. He isn't saying that, you're never going to have, you're never going to have war. But all of those shows are strongly not pro-war. Yeah, I mean, I disagree that, I mean, the whole thing about violence being part of our nature is, I think, here's the thing. Violence is part of our nature, but so is nurturing. Mothers aren't violent to their children all the time. Mothers are naturally nurturing to their children. Why don't we see shows about that? If that's in our nature, we should be seeing as many nurturing shows as we see violent shows, but we don't. So that tells me that there's while certainly people have a tendency towards violence, I'm wary to use that as evidence of anything one way or another. It's certainly there. But again, there are many things ingrained in us. So there's more to it than that, certainly. And again, not saying that you don't, but and I mean, it's certainly true. It's more or less biological. But I mean, I know a lot of nonviolent people, and a lot of people who are not naturally violent. So Epic Anime Freak. I've not analyzed the recycled footage of Gundam Seed Destiny because I don't think there's much there to analyze. Just like I don't analyze the recycled footage in Gundam Wing or Gundam Seed. It's there. They recycled footage. Yeah, it happens. Now, granted, I watched Seed Destiny with the HD, not with the HD remaster, but with the reworked version of the final episode. So Gundam Seed Destiny Plus. And I know there was a lot of recycled stuff in those episodes that they fixed for the release. So I didn't see that bit of it. But to me, recycled footage is just a thing that I'll mention, but I don't think it really rewards analysis. I do not believe that males are more prone to violence than females, or men or women. I think both genders are equally prone to violence. Different violence, though. I'll put it this way. I think the reason I'm being cagey here is that a lot of times people take this to say, media has violence in it, and it doesn't, that violence does not actually occur on actual human beings. Thus, it's completely benign. I have a problem with that. I don't think that if you consume violence every day for a decade, and for example, if someone watches puppies being throttled for an hour a day for a decade, psychologists will tell you what will happen to that person. That does not have a completely benign effect. So I have problems when folks say, well, we can just watch violence all the time and it doesn't matter. I think it does matter. I think the elements of our culture that we choose to spend time with do affect us in the same way that anime has affected all of our lives. I mean, we're all probably different people for having watched anime. There's all anime that we've watched that we're like, oh my gosh, this changed my life. It affects us. So I think it is important to recognize violent content as, at the very least, problematic, as something where if there is commonplace, constant violence, and especially, again, I want to say senseless violence where, bang, bang, you're dead, bang, bang, you're dead, and it's consequence-free violence. And that is being, and that has kind of soaked into our culture. That is not necessarily perfectly okay. That's kind of what I'm saying. Gundam Seed Destiny is not the only anime series with recycled animation. I don't know how much anime you've watched, but there's lots of recycled animation in most anime series. Go back to original Macross, and there's a lot of recycled animation. Most mecha series have plenty of recycled animation. That is not a concern among mecha fans or anime fans in general. That's anime fans are totally used to recycled animation. That's not a concern. They're looking for story, they're looking for character, they're looking for how that animation tells the story. Shinjuku Station, cool. It's kind of like when we've all had this person that we talked to online where they start complaining because an anime series has the same plot as an anime they watched last year. It's like, oh my gosh, with Magical Girl series. Oh, and there's a cute anime character, a cute animal character. That's original. Like, well, that's kind of part of the genre. A cute animal character is just kind of a standard thing in a Magical Girl series. There's lots of plot in lots of different things. I don't know how much Scooby-Doo you watched at Epic Anime Freak, but no. No. But at this point, it looks like you're just trolling and you just hate Seed Destiny. Hey, if you're convinced that Seed Destiny is terrible, that's fine. But, insisting that it's horrible because you think it's horrible, I can't argue that. I did not hear they're doing a new Macross series. That's cool. I don't think Seed Destiny needs a remake, but then I don't think much of anything needs a remake. I'm against remakes in general. And that is certainly true, Liquidus. There is both nature and nurture. I've certainly known families where, two kids raised in the same environment by the same parents, twins even, turn out very differently. But also people who had all sorts of issues early on who, in the right environment, really blossomed. I'd rather, instead of they make Seed Destiny, they make something new. There's, let it lie and get on with one's life is kind of my general advice for anime staff. Obviously, sometimes folks remake things and it's very interesting, but generally speaking, I'm not that excited about that. Wait, he hmm. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that Shoji Kawamori designed the new Thunderbirds in the CGI series. That's awesome. Or at least the Thunderbird Shadow. It looks like a YF-19. That's cool. That's interesting. Huh. Cool. Yeah, and Mitch Artis, that's a great example. You know, the remake of Yamato slash Star Blazers, very interesting. You know, the redux of Captain Harlock as a CGI film, very interesting. But in general, yeah. I mean, I'd rather they do the Seed movie they've been promising for a long time. That's what I want. I don't want them to go back and rework a story. And I mean, we already have the HD remaster. I'm fine with it. The other thing too is, I mean, let's um, there's a point at which it makes sense to just kind of be okay with recycled footage. You know, I've not seen the origin yet, the origin OVA yet. I kind of want to wait till it's done to watch it. I had that problem with Gundam Unicorn. I started watching it, and there was so much time between episodes. I didn't want to wait, so I might be waiting on Gundam the Origin. I like what I've seen of the trailer so far. But what have you guys seen? What do you think? Because I'm just too excited about it to watch part of it and then wait. I know I'm gonna like it too much. I also have the problem that since it's about kids and I have some triggers about kids, I'm a little worried that it's going to set off some of my triggers. So I'm a little worried on that score. On a larger note, I can certainly talk about this. I think it's awesome they're doing Gundam the Origin. I think it's a great idea to go back and tell some of that backstory and flesh out some of those stories that we've seen little bits and pieces about. What I think about Anno directing a new Godzilla film, I think it's awesome. A trailer dropped for the fourth the fourth Evangelion film. I don't know if you saw that. So yeah, I think we are going to get Evangelion 4 sooner or later. That said, I think it's awesome that he's doing. I think it would be awesome if he did a Godzilla movie. I think that's right down his alley. I think he'd be awesome at it. I love Godzilla Final Wars, which was a Godzilla movie done by a respected director. So I think that would be really cool. I think he would do a really interesting Godzilla film. And I think there'd be a lot of action. I mean, he knows how to do that. I don't really have favorite Gundams or favorites in general, the Epic Anime Freak, so I can't answer that, unfortunately. I will say of the three, Sea Destiny, Wing, and Stargazer, Wing will always have a special place in my heart. I'll probably have to choose Wing. Just because, but that's a special case on me. Maps. Nice. Remember all of the, there were a lot of ads for Maps on video, on the VHS tapes back in the day. A lot of those, when they had one or two previews at the beginning of anime tapes, Maps seemed to always be on one of those. Yeah, I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see that Evangelion 4.0 film soon. Yeah, it could be Liquidus. I have not seen the first episode of Gundam the Origin. Again, I don't know that I want to get into it. I think I want to wait until it's done. I have it though. Well, Epic Anime Freak, the problem with that, and I thank you for the feedback. I produced content consistently for years, and no one showed up. Every week there was a new video. And I did that for months and months and months and months. And I had ads on, and I made a grand total of something like $21 on ads. I'm not convinced that consistency is going to actually get me stuff. So I now make videos when I want to. Oh, sure. Well, there got references in Shirobako. So that's not uncommon. Well, I guess it is uncommon. But yeah, non-sunrise anime reference Gundam. Definitely true. Oh, Maps is on YouTube. That's cool. Well, the other thing is, why do I want subs? I mean, okay, so I'm asking this rhetorically, obviously, but the other thing is, I mean, I'll be brutally honest here. I'm not convinced that anime fans want what I provide. Some do, a few do, but I am too analytical for most anime fans. Most anime fans want me to squee over One Piece. Anime fans want me to write about the most recent, do a video about every episode of Naruto that comes out. Those get subs. Analyses of Boogiepop Phantom, no one cares about. I don't care about Naruto. I don't care about One Piece. I care about Boogiepop Phantom. So that is a problem. Again, I have no plans on leaving. I plan to produce more content. This is not a screw it all. I'm just saying I don't see indications that my stuff is ripe for lots of subs. The other problem is I don't get emotional the way other people do. I'm not going to scream and yell. That's just not me. No offense to Epic Anime Freak, but I've been doing YouTube videos for many years. I know how much money I'm making. Okay, you want to know? I have all right. I have ads enabled on my videos. Not every single one, but the big ones, You want to know how much money I made off of videos last month? $4. And that's with a couple of hundred videos with ads enabled. So I think I know my revenue model well enough. Hey, Aphrodicus, no, we're just chatting. I'm just kind of answering people's questions and talking along. So ask a question. Yeah, Pete, there is a countdown on the new Gundam site. We'll hear more about it in a couple of days. So we'll find out. I'm aware. So yeah, Aphrodicus, if you have any questions or comments or things, feel free to ask them. Thank you, Epic Anime Freak. I think I'm underrated too. But no, the Skycrawlers just put me to sleep. The Skycrawlers was just so dull. I actually watched that with a friend, and we were just kind of we were just groaning the whole time. Just, oh, come on. And I understand there's depth there. There's stuff going on in the Skycrawlers, but it would just, yeah, Skycrawlers was just something of a disappointment. Beautiful animation, though. I mean, if you like animation, especially animation of fighter jets, Skycrawlers is definitely worth a watch. But the plot itself is just a bit of a mess. Unfortunately. Thank you, Mr. Artist. Yeah, when I like talking to people too. One of the things Evan and I have actually been talking about is doing more of these sort of things. We're talking with people on a regular basis. You know, we'll actually say, okay, this Friday we're going to do a hangout with people and we'll talk, because this is fun. It's just a matter of kind of scheduling it and figuring all that out. You know, Deviant Anime Freak, you're absolutely right. The success formula is to review the latest shonen series and fanboy over them and throw in lots of, you know, gah! And unfortunately, it is true. And the other problem too is just the anime. So when I got into anime fandom in America was generally older fans, folks who were in their mid-20s to 30s. And unfortunately, over time, it's gotten younger. And I mean, unfortunately, not in the sense that younger people are worse, but in the sense that younger fans don't have as much money, and younger fans aren't interested in the more intellectual analysis. They tend to be distracted by or be excited by appeals to emotion as opposed to appeals to intellect. And that has also, in addition, there has been a shorter life cycle of fans. So people cycle out of the industry and out of fandom pretty quickly. So unfortunately, just kind of the reality is a lot of anime fans are young fans who have not been into anime for a long time and will probably burn out in a year or two. They're all, you know, 14, 15, 16 years old, and they like seeing PewDiePie. They like seeing people who just, you know, throw all sorts of emotion at the screen. They're not interested in my kind of video, unfortunately. Sorry, I have to scroll up again. And I agree, Aphrodicus, the acquisition of Legend of the Galactic Heroes is an awesome sign. I was blown away that got licensed. I remember, you know, staring at my phone and seeing that. Oh my gosh. Yes, I think Girls in Panzer worked its genre well, although it's kind of an odd genre. I mean, there's not a lot of little girls in tanks anime out there, but I think it did it very well. I think it was effective. What do you think about anime fans who fall in the gray area of downloading their anime from other sites, yet if they like what they saw, they go for the official sets? I am one of those fans. I watch fan subs a lot, but I buy an official copy if and when I can. If I, you know, unless I watched half an episode and just didn't like it. But yeah, no, I'm absolutely, I totally appreciate that. I think if you, you know, if you use fan subs as a way of just getting a feel for the show, I think that's perfectly reasonable. What I think is unreasonable is if you watch half or more or less the entire series, then the entire show comes out and you refuse to buy it, even though you would technically have the, you know, the capital to do so. And similarly, I think, you know, obviously we can't buy every show that we ever watch. There's also some limit on saying, okay, I watched 2 episodes of this show, I've got to buy the entire box set. But I think folks who have these huge collections of fan subs and buy 2 things, but they also have a big collection of video games, that gives me hives. But yeah, I think that's an understandable approach, is to say we're going to use fan subs to at least get a feel for the show and then buy the box set if and when it's available. Been a fan for 12 years now. Awesome, Aphrodicus. What got you into anime, Aphrodicus? I'm very curious. I do not think Zeta is inferior to 0079 or superior. I think they are very different shows, and I think they have different pluses and minuses. The animation on Zeta is unquestionably superior to the animation in Mobile Suit Gundam. But ultimately, Gundam was more original. It accomplished more, if you will. And there are other, back and forth. Bebop got you started. Sorry, didn't even see that. And yeah, and I hear you, Derpy. One of the things I really liked about Girls in Panzer is the fact that you got a sense for how those tanks actually moved and worked. There was a realism to Girls in Panzer, despite the fact of, girls who, let's be honest, they all look like they're 12. But the fact that these girls are sort of popping their heads up out of these tanks while live rounds are firing. Silly. But in terms of the actual sense of the movement of the tanks and their strengths and weaknesses, I thought it really felt strongly real. Well, Derpy, again, I've been following anime costs, and unless you're buying like Aniplex things, unless you're trying to buy like Fate Stay Night or Fate Zero, anime costs like $3 or $4 an episode these days. For regular releases, standard edition releases, it's about $3 an episode. Again, Epic Anime Freak, I don't think there is a best protagonist. I mean, how do you rank Amuro against Hiro Yui and against versus Domon Kashu? They're just completely different characters in different universes with different pressures. I'm glad to hear that, Game Escape. I'm glad that this has helped to help you. It's why I do this channel, and it's why I do this stuff, because I know this helps people. I don't think I'm ever going to be hugely successful for this. Yeah, remember Derby33, all of those in all of those hentai things, everyone's in college. All those characters in hentai are actually in college. Again, there's no worst Epic Anime Freak. My brain does not work that way. I was like, what was it? There was an old anime review site back in, I think, the early 90s, or the early 2000s rather, where they would review hentai, and they'd always say, these girls, all these girls in high school crossed out college. Like, sure. I don't know. But and that's why, like, I don't get worked up over people watching hentai. I don't get worked up over people consuming all sorts of things. I think that's totally your choice. I get worked up and I get frustrated when people refuse to support an industry in any way, shape, or form. When it's like, okay, I'm a huge anime fan, but I pirate everything. I'm like, well, maybe you should consider, helping to pay rent for the animators who make the things that you love. That's at some point, you got to put your money where your mouth is. But yeah, no, I think that's totally understandable. And the other thing about that too is, like, if you lived in Japan, and so you had access to all of these shows, you get them streaming, or you could TiVo them, or whatever your device of choice is. I think that makes piracy less reasonable. But where over here it's like, how do you do that? It's like, how, we can't just watch these shows, so we kind of need those as an in, if you will. I think it's a more reasonable. And you're absolutely right, Epic Anime Freak. Hentai makes sex look way more exciting than it actually is. It's like, yeah, no. Gorefest OVAs from the 90s, like MD Geist. That is actually an interesting topic. That was a big thing in the 90s, mainly because of Akira. I mean, Akira had enough gore in it, and it made so much money that folks were like, oh, hey, this will sell. So there's a lot of that, and ultimately it didn't. I mean, there were a few successes, but it didn't sell that well, and it kind of tapered off. And of course, the moral panic around Tsutomu Miyazaki didn't help either. Yeah, there aren't that, I can't think of any good hentai dubs, much less great ones. Actually, I take that back. There is one, Fencer of Minerva. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's past the watershed. Fencer of Minerva is like the only hentai I can remember the name of, partly because it's dubbed, one of the characters is dubbed by Crispin Freeman. And it's basically the John Norman Gore all girls are sex slaves universe as a hentai with a main character dubbed by Crispin Freeman. It's amazing. Well, see, pretty much all anime are advertisements, basically. I mean, they're all sort of advertisements for the manga or the light novel series or the video game or whatever. Most of them are. So actually, Epic Anime Freak, it's funny you should say that. We have a Patreon. If you go to Patreon and search for Geek Spectrum, I put up a Patreon. We mentioned it in a video, like in a live stream a couple of weeks ago, and never made a video about it. So we need to do that because no one actually knows it exists. But yes, we have a Patreon. Let me remind myself of what it is. So again, search for Geek Spectrum on Patreon. And I think it's just patreon.com/Geek Spectrum. Let me double check that. Let's see here. Is that correct? Yeah. And if you pledge $1 more per video, we will send you recommendations. So you can ask us what recommendations, you can tell us what you like or don't like, and we'll suggest some shows or movies for you, anime or non. At $2 or more per video, we will send free stuff to people. So you're entered into a drawing, monthly drawing for something free, a poster or something, at $2 a video. Then $5 a video, you get put in for, we will actually do a live hangout with you, which is cool. Yeah, I'm sure every anime voice actor has done hentai at some point, probably. It happens. It's just weird hearing recognizably Crispin Freeman doing hentai, and with all the words, with all of the sound effects, it's kind of amazing. It's rather wonderful, and fortunately, it's a relatively understated hentai. That's not accurate. There's lots of kinky stuff in there, a lot of kinky stuff in there, but there's not a lot of language, which helps. Do I foresee a viable future on Kickstarter for the niche crowd? Yes, for various definitions of viable. I think Kickstarter is showing that it is useful for releases of well-known things. I think I think things like Kickstarter are going to be very good for supplementary stuff. a limited edition release of this one thing. Things like the Little Witch Academia 2 Kickstarter. I don't think we're going to see like anime series funded by Kickstarter. There's just too much money is needed for those. And folks have tried it and the money just hasn't come up yet. So I think it's going to be really difficult to do. But I think, yes, it's going to be very helpful for licensing certain kind of little one-off things. Not necessarily little, but, shorter one-off things, or for funding small things. But just, given an anime series, any given anime series costs between $2 and $8 million. And while there are Kickstarters that have made that much money, they're generally not anime. They're a video game. There are circumstances behind those. So I don't think that's going to happen. There's just, or it might happen once, but it's not going to be a standard process. But yes, there are hentai doujins of everything, and I mean everything. Any anime series you can name has a hentai doujin of it, which is kind of scary. But yeah. But I mean, the other thing about hentai, just to kind of pull back around, so to speak, let's be honest, hentai is not that interesting of a topic. I mean, hentai is hentai. It's kind of porn. I think people get really, oh my gosh, there's anime porn, and oh my gosh, there's this doujin of this famous series. It's like, yeah. Hentai is one of those things where it exists. There is certainly hentai that I think is troublesome, and it would be worth kind of discussing and debating. But in fact, speaking of Gundam, there's a character in Double Zeta Gundam who is technically a reference to Lolicon, which is kind of amazing. The staff was basically foregrounding the existence of Lolicon in a very subtle way and saying, are we all okay with this? Are we all really fine with this kind of material out there? And partly as a result of that, it did get kind of pushed further underground of folks saying, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be spending, putting this right in front of there. What do I think about people who are outside the fandom that think all anime is hentai? It's annoying. Again, I don't know that there's much you can do about that. It's kind of like people who think that all comic books are Thor. Or the people who think that all fantasy is Lord of the Rings. Again, there's not too much you can do about it. You kind of have to you have to judge if the person is open-minded, if they have just been misinformed, or if they're just like, well, it's all hyper-violent XXX stuff. So depends on the person. It happens. It's fortunately more rare now than it used to be. That was certainly the norm before, and now it's closer to the exception. Now when people think anime, they think more Pokemon. They think other things. The other thing too is, anime often doesn't help itself. So, I'm not familiar with that connection between Gundam Double Zeta and Ideon JL West 23. What is the connection? Or if I did, it's escaping me right now. I'm trying to think. Was there a mecha that was sort of recycled for Double Zeta? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in anime that really does look like it's sexy, shall we put it that way. In fact, a friend of mine was telling me that there is a cover for Princess Tutu that I mean, it's a show that is completely non-sexual. I mean, it deals with it deals with people falling in love with each other, and there are things related to like coming of age, but it's very non-sexual. But there's a whole thing. There's a cover which features one of the main characters, and what looks like sort of a black camisole teddy, although it's sort of ballet like, but it's sort of this very brief thing in a cage, and she's clearly, you know, maybe 13. And we see a girl in this sort of frilly black outfit in a cage and think, oh, it's symbolic. Other people see that and think it's porn. So there was a campaign to change the cover so people wouldn't think that you're buying child porn when you're buying this Magical Girl series. It happens. Yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, weeaboo is just a slur. You know, it's a cultural slur, and that's something you just kind of have to say. Okay, well, you know, do we really want to get into you're part of this sub community, thus you are X, because we can really go there. You know, you're into comic books. Oh well, then you are X. Yeah, there's only so much to go on there. Well, there's CNN and then there's CNN, right? But again, I mean, and kind of legitimately, there's a lot of anime that is child porn or close to it. I am not aware of these Tumblr feminist attacks on the Gundam series. I can understand why feminists would claim Tomino is sexist. He tends to be very bad at writing female characters, and he certainly was early on. His female characters tended to be very his characters were generally either very passive or were what I would generally call guys with breasts, meaning that they were very tough, and they wanted to fight, and they wanted to do stuff, and they wanted to accomplish things, and they were very fierce and kind of ball busters, if you will. Not that that is a bad kind of character to do. Not that a woman can't do those things, but he tended to write characters who were very or female characters who were kind of ball busters in that sense. And there really those are kind of the only two types of female characters there were. You see that in Gundam, you see that original Gundam, you see that in Zeta, you see it in Double Zeta. And it wasn't really until Turn A that he got out of that he managed to write more interesting female characters. But yeah, it's you know, I can understand them being frustrated with that. That's interesting, JL West. Yeah. I mean, that sounds to me more like Tomino kind of trolling his audience, or him, you know, just coming up with a fan theory, not a fan theory, but coming up with a way of bringing everything together. And again, I mean, I mean, to be fair, I think it's important to understand the difference between saying all anime have bath scenes is not a big deal, and saying, well, maybe bath scenes are a big deal and we're just used to it. You know, that's problematic. Yeah, I won't get into Anita Sarkeesian because she's not really relevant here. I think, you know, a case can be made that Gundam has done a poor job at representing female characters as being active and being able to, you know, change their surroundings. Female characters have generally been not very active in anime series. I think back to the original Gundam. You know, of all of the bridge crew, Mirai is certainly effective, but Sayla doesn't accomplish much, and she fails fairly frequently. Frau is very passive, more or less passive. There are a few things where she's like, well, I'll do something. And she does do things. But she's not nearly as active in solving the problems of the war, if you will, as the male characters are. And again, you see that further forward in other Gundam series. And there's, you know, generally speaking, Gundam has not had good roles for female characters. You know, that's the thing. I will disagree with you, JL West, that Anita cherry picks. I've watched her videos, and I disagree with that. I think she chooses examples, but I think it. You know, people have said, well, not all video games are like that. Well, of course not. But she's picking examples, and I think you have to pick some examples. Anyway. But yeah, no, I think a case can be made, but I don't think Gundam is intentionally misogynistic. I don't think it's intentionally showing. I don't think it has an intentional agenda. And I think in general, it at least includes strong female characters in the broader sense of the term strong. You know, they are effective, they are competent, they accomplish things. So yeah. You know, again, I think it's kind of a middle ground there in terms of calling Gundam full-scale misogynistic. But I think it's worth pointing out that Gundam has generally been poor at that. It's why I was so happy to see Gundam Build Fighters Try start out with a female character. You know, first episode, our protagonist is female. You end up getting two other male characters and sort of a team amongst those three, but that's really cool. Now, to Epic Anime Freak's point, she is sexualized. Although, granted, most female anime characters are sexualized. That's a problem, too. But yeah, the whole Build Fighters franchise is kind of fundamentally fan service, but there's a lot of female fan service there. So, and that gets to the point. I mean, and also, again, kind of in fairness to that argument, there is a heck of a lot of female fan service in anime and very little similar male fan service. So that's kind of problematic, you know. And I mean, you know, yeah, there's fan service for Hoshino. There was also fan service for LP Peru and Double Zeta Gundam. And she's like 10. Now, it's not, you know, technically fan service, and you know, she's not sexualized, but she's naked a lot. LP Peru is. You know, we have to grapple with these things. We have to discuss these things. Well, PETA is kind of crazy, in fairness. I mean, PETA has always been very extreme. They have... if you go back and you look at like an actual history of PETA that's not like written by them, you'll find PETA is a highly problematic organization to begin with. So yeah, I mean, there's, you know, these are issues. Now, the other thing to point out is that, like, you know, Japan has a very different view on sexuality than we do. Okay. Let's see here. And Epic Anime Freak, you are being blocked. Yeah, so there's a lot of weird fan service. I say weird. Anime is okay with sexualizing characters younger than we are comfortable with sexualizing them, or I should say, anime staff are comfortable with that. Understand those are different cultural norms. Also understand that, you know, ages of consent are different in Japan than they are over here. Acceptance of the beginning of sexuality is different in Japan as they are over here. You know, so there's a certain approach to these things, which is not saying it's right. It's just saying that be aware that there is a cultural difference as to why they do these things. But yeah. It is 1 a.m. Wow. I've been going for like 3 hours now. Gosh. Anime Freak got blocked by saying F Anita and her scam, Gamergate for the win. I can't support that. That's trolling. And that is a side of the internet that I do not want to be associated with. You know, you can disagree with Nina Sarkeesian. You can have all sorts of problems. You can have all sorts of opinions on that. But, you know, that's going too far. Not in my channel. I don't want people acting like that in my channel, saying things like that in my channel. Yeah, exactly, Steve. It's Friday night, one of those things. Shinsekai Yori. I don't think I watched it unless I know it by a different name. I'm going to look it up here. Shinsekai Yori. New World. Is that toward the New World? From the New World. I know some Japanese. Let me look at it. I don't think I've seen it, but I'm just sort of looking it up now. Let's see here. Psychic abilities, agrarian villages. No, it looks interesting though. I may have to watch that. Yeah, there are specific laws in America about how old people can be, but you know, yeah, you know, in Japan they're more comfortable with the idea that teenagers have sex. It may still be illegal for them to do so, but representing that in pop culture is more acceptable in Japan. Yeah, when it comes to Gamergate, I'm happy with people being having their own opinions on these topics. But when it turns into attacks on people, or when it turns into people saying, you know, things like that against people on either side of the conflict, I will not have that in my world. That's not cool. Am I neutral against the whole feminist thing? That's an unanswerable question. I'll put it this way. Again, I've watched Anita Sarkeesian's videos, not every single second of them, but I've watched a large chunk of them. And I think she, and it's like any argument about a large issue like that, where you're kind of trying to look at a trend across a huge amount of material. There are certainly exceptions, but I think, yeah, in general, video games have had a poor history with female characters and representing them as having agency and all those sorts of things. I think people could have done, I think video games could have done better at showing female characters, girls and women, as having more to do in games, if you will. There's consistently you have boy protagonists and girls being saved. Lots of inconsistency. I mean, rather, lots of exceptions. It's not a rule, but I think that is a, certainly generally something that happens. Does it mean that video games need to be boycotted? No. Does it mean that video game people are evil? No. But I don't think Anita Sarkeesian was saying that. Anyway, you could certainly shoot holes in her specific examples and in things she said. I'm not saying that her arguments were flawless. I'm saying that, I think in general, yeah, female characters have gotten more or less, there are a lot fewer games made with female protagonists, shall we say. Yeah. And then I saw how people responded to that, and I got kind of sick. The fact that, the mere fact that she said those things led people to dox her and do all these various things. I saw the reaction, and I saw the posts about it, and I saw what people were saying. And I don't think that's right. I don't think the Gamergate response to Anita Sarkeesian was appropriate. You can disagree, fine. You can analyze what she said, fine. But I think that level of response was kind of crazy. Yeah. So yeah, and again, I think if feminists did that to men, I would have the same reaction. I think, people, if that side had done that to men, I think that would be problematic too. But I think, hounding somebody for daring to post some videos with some opinions, and having done a Kickstarter for it, I think that's just kind of silly. But yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think that, again, I think people go very strong one way or the other, I don't think that video games are intentionally bash women. I don't think that video games are evil and the video games are problematic and so forth. But again, I don't think that was really the point of the videos when I watched them. So yeah, I have problems when people actually attack other people for their opinions. That's my real problem. So, and I also have problems when people have this really overblown reaction to an opinion. And I'll say this and I'll finish up. And we'll get back to what we were talking about before, or other topics. There are massively more views on videos that purport to debate or discuss or disagree with Anita Sarkeesian than on her actual videos. So people are jumping on the response videos without actually going back and watching Anita Sarkeesian's videos. That's the kind of behavior that concerned me. It's kind of problematic. Anyway, I don't think games cause sexism. No. I think games could reinforce sexism. Just like games could reinforce any number of things. Like we were talking about earlier, I think, if you are consuming the same message over and over and over again, that can reinforce views you have. And I think that you can, I think it can build up opinions in there. I mean, I think there could be a causal connection, but in the same way that everything is connected. Going back to Serial Experiments Lane, I think again, if a person is a blank slate and is exposed to a consistently sexist message, then yeah, that can cause them to be, sexist. It's obviously a lot more complex than that. I think video games could have a negative effect on them, on people, if that message is repeated over and over again. Again, I think, cause, I think, is strong. Causal connection, maybe. I don't know. But it's like what I was saying earlier. It's like, how do you, I think we all know. I mean, society knows that repeated exposure to something has a specific effect on people. It doesn't just go away. So I think that is certainly true. Well, Steve, I mean, I watched the vids, and that's what I was seeing. I was not seeing anything massively controversial in the vids. I think people were, well, I'll put it this way. Maybe Anita phrased some things in a way that made it sound strong. But again, that doesn't make it okay to have the reaction people had. I think, really, you're going to put hackles up because of what one person posted in a video on YouTube. That's crazy. Well, it's like what happened with me with Gundam Seed Destiny. I had the temerity to defend Gundam Seed Destiny, and people were sending me, the vilest of comments and posting the vilest of stuff. It's, that's not a reasonable reaction. That's not a defensible reaction. But anyway, we are not here to talk about video games or Gamergate. Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of problems and issues out there. There are a lot of there's a lot of stuff that's just problematic, and it's worth discussing, worth talking about. Sorry, just unblocking Anime Freak there. It takes a little while to find the actual place. Thanks for stopping by, Game Escape. Appreciate it. I'm probably gonna head off in a little bit too. Actually, actually, I'm meeting up with Evan tomorrow. We're gonna be talking over plans and new videos and ideas and so forth. But do you guys have anything else you want to talk about? Any questions? Conversation and stuff. I have a few more minutes here. and then I will probably crash. Might watch some QI, some quite interesting. You're welcome, Epic Anime Freak. And again, I blocked you simply to make a point. I'm not saying people can't have opinions. Grandmaster Prayer asks about this anime season's lineup. Again, all I've seen so far are Classroom Crisis, which I'm very interested in. Roka, which I'm also very interested in. I tried, what was it? Punchline, which I think was from last season, but still ongoing, not my kind of thing. Apology accepted, Epic Anime Freak. Totally understood. You're cool. Mr. Artist asks what conventions I'm doing panels at this year. Good question. I will be at Otakon this year doing 2 panels. I will be doing a panel called Harry Potter versus Spike Spiegel, Mythic Tropes in Anime versus the West. While we're talking about mythic tropes and how they're handled differently in Japan than in the West, particularly in regards to anime and manga. And I will also be doing a panel about, what's the other one? I forget. I'm doing a panel about something else. It hasn't been scheduled yet. It's just they've said I am doing this thing. So let me go to otakon.com and I will skim through the panel list. And then I've submitted to Anime USA for later on in the year. And let's see, programming, panels, panel roster. So I'm doing that. Where is it? There's Harry Potter. Oh, Ink and Paint Come Alive, How Anime is Made. So I'm doing a video or a panel about the animation, the production of animation, how anime is actually drawn, financed, assembled, edited, etc., and so forth. So that's interesting. Yeah, Dragon Ball Super. I will have to check out Dragon Ball Super just because it's Dragon Ball. That's kind of a fundamental franchise. You started with Seed. Interesting. Cool. A lot of folks did. Seed was a big gateway anime, particularly in Japan. So I'm trying to think any other shows I watched from this season. I think there was 1 or 2, but they didn't really make much of an impression, obviously. So I'll go back and check some of the more Moe series because one of those might grab. Yeah, Dragon Ball is kind of fundamental. So yes, I'm doing those 2 at Otakon. I've submitted a bunch for Anime USA. That may or may, but those may or may not happen. I don't know how many will get accepted, but I've submitted like 7 or 8 panels. So. Sasami Magical Girls Club. I could not get into that show. I watched the first couple episodes and was like, this is just too blah about it. There's something about it. Oh, cool. You're going to be at Ichiban Con and Triad Anime Convention. Good luck, Mr. Artist. Hopefully I'll make it to some of that. I have not seen Gate yet, but I would like to check that out. Oh, I'm a Tenchi fan too. I'm a huge Tenchi fan. I've seen pretty much everything Tenchi ever. But there's something about Sasami Magical Girls Club that just didn't. I guess the problem is having seen Magical Project S, and that's probably my favorite Magical Girls series. Magical Girls Club was just, there was something about it that was just Yeah. Mm. But now that you mentioned Gate there, Pete, I'll push that further up the chain to watch Gate. I'll give that a try. But again, you guys know I'm not huge on watching all the anime coming out right now. So I'll give some things a try. We'll see. Yeah, I hear that, Pete. Anime Expo is just too expensive for me. I'm with you, Dark Realm. I just love Gundam. I like Gundam, period. Glad to hear your brother's okay there, Pete. Gotcha, Liquidus. That makes sense. Yeah, I saw Pretty Sammy and then Magical Project S and then Magical Girls Club. So yeah, for me, Anime Expo, I have to fly across the country. So it's a bit much for me to do AX. Did it 1 year, which was awesome, but not something I'm going to do every year, unfortunately. I will be at Gen Con this year, though, the big gaming convention. That'll be fun. I'll be doing some panels there. That's in Indianapolis. And my favorite Sasami spinoff is Magical Project S because they actually did stories. They actually built stories. Magical Project S is pretty sad, actually. I really like the drama in Magical Project S. And it kind of deconstructs Magical Girl, which is interesting. I don't know. I really loved the most recent Gundam series, both Unicorn and Gundam Build Fighters. I thought they were awesome, personally. Again, I don't have favorites. Epic Anime Freak. I don't know. Depends on the show. Depends on what's going on. But let's be honest, Char's awesome. Where did I find Evan? That's an interesting story. At Katsucon last year, I was doing a panel on, it was actually kind of a version of this How Anime is Made panel, and it was scheduled for 7:45 in the morning on Saturday. So I was like, okay, I'll do my panel, but no one's going to show up. And I got there, and sure enough, there were like 6 people in the room. And I did my panel, and some other folks trickled in, and I ended up with maybe a dozen people total in the panel. And it was good. There were folks there. But in the front row, there was this guy who was kind of giving me rapt attention and asked some questions. And after the panel, he came up to me and asked some further questions and just really wanted to kind of dive into this stuff. And we ended up going and having breakfast together at the little hotel breakfast nook there. It's actually like a restaurant. And it turns out he got into anime a long time ago, many, many years ago, and kind of got out of it and was now trying to get back into anime. And he hadn't come across anyone else who really had a more comprehensive view of anime, if you will. So that was kind of interesting. They wanted a big story. I'm sorry. He wanted somebody who could kind of give him more context, and a lot of the other panelists just didn't have that context. So we traded contact information, and as is typical, at least for me at conventions, we didn't talk again until like the next year. And then when Katsucon rolled around, he pinged me and said, "Hey, we should meet up." And so we met up at Katsucon this past year. This was back in what, January, February, I think. And then we moved forward, and we talked for hours. So yeah, that was his big. So after that, we decided. So in that conversation, he explained that he's an audiovisual tech as his real job, and he has all this equipment. And I was like, oh, we could actually like expand and do cool things. And so he invited me over to his place, and we started looking over all of his stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, microphones and all that. And that was when I was like, okay, we can do Smoke and Mirrors. We can do these other shows. Evan does not do any other content. You know, if you see him on this channel, that's all he's doing. And again, he has a lot of experience with anime. He goes way back, but he just hasn't been following it as you know, as consistently as I have. We live in the same general area, but we're not like neighbors or anything. So we have to kind of drive back and forth to each other's places. I drive to his place mostly. But yeah, no, he and his view is he doesn't have as much experience, so he wants me to be there in any given video, so I can actually provide the context and so forth. So yeah, no, if I'm still kind of the central person, for better or worse. Excuse me. Let's see here. I have watched neither Arslan Senki or Berserk. I watched like the first episode of Arslan, and it was interesting, but it didn't really appeal to me much. Berserk is just too violent and over the top and shonen-y for my tastes. Although I think that's technically a seinen series, but it's just too, you know, grr arg, I'm a big muscly guy with a sword and I run around and I do things and I'm very angsty. It's just not my kind of story, at least from what I saw of it. You know, I could be convinced otherwise, but just what I saw of it didn't really appeal to me much. You know, I like some tech stuff. I'm sorry, tech stuff. You know, I like Conan-y type stuff, but something about Berserk just didn't really appeal to me. It seemed a little too over the top. Yeah, I'm in the tech industry. Yeah, there's a lot of anime fans in the tech industry. You come across quite a few references and such. I used to wear it more on my sleeve at work, but now I hold back more than I used to. There's a fair number of anime fans, and we talk about it, but it's like, you know, in the real world, you'll find a few people who watch Bleach or One Piece, a few folks who watch maybe they've seen Cowboy Bebop or Ghost in the Shell, but not a lot of like anime fans. No, so I'll reveal this. Hopefully none of you are crazy stalker people. So this is my place. I'm streaming this from my home, and we do Smoke and Mirrors in. It's not Evan's home, but it's a place he owns. So it's a property he has, and we stream from there. So 2 different places. Yeah, we have similar tastes, not exactly the same, which is also good. And yeah, we tend to match up. He's really enjoying Gundam when we do Open Gundam style, and he's seen no Gundam before. So yeah, we tend to match up. He loved Lane, but he's also liked some shows that I don't really love, like Love Hina. He just loves that show, and you know, it's a fun show, but I just don't have the same affection for it. But yeah, tech industry is probably more anime literate than most fields, but I wouldn't know. I don't work in any of those, so I can't say. Academia, yeah, it might be a little less common. That would make sense. Interesting. So yeah, I've done all of the Otaku no Video videos here in my place. But Smoke and Mirrors and the other shows we can do over at his place where we have more space, more equipment, stuff like this. But this is easy because I can just kind of sit down and record videos. I will tell you guys, I have recorded and assembled 2 more Otaku no Video style videos about the anime process, the animation process. So I have 2 videos about like what makes anime basically, and about like sort of character animation, stuff like that. I have another few of those that I've recorded but not assembled yet, but those should be coming out onto this channel pretty soon, in the next few weeks. So I know I mentioned I made those before. or I'd taped them before, I'd recorded them before, but I actually sit down and kind of finish them. So I am doing some of those things. Also thinking of doing some more review. Again, the problem with the review stuff is it's a lot of work in assembly for not a lot of reward. Smoke and mirrors is easy to just for us to get together and do because we kind of sit down and talk. But it's not as well designed as those review videos are. So I got to kind of I got to juggle that. But it takes hours for me to make those videos. So. Yeah, the tech industry can be expensive. I mean, there's lots of stuff that takes money to play around with. I've got 3 working 3D printers surrounding me, a drone in the corner, and an Oculus Rift over there. And that's cool. It's fun to play around with those things, but it's not cheap. Fortunately, working in the tech industry kind of gives you the money to be able to play around with that stuff. And I have like 6 Raspberry Pis around. So yeah. Anime scene is juvenile for that crowd, and to be fair, a lot of anime is very juvenile. Shonen series are aimed at like 8 to 10-year-old boys in Japan. Actually, practically, whoever actually watches them, the ads. And when I was in Japan, I was seeing ads for Fairy Tail and for other shonen series, and the ads showed like 8, 9-year-old boys playing with the toys. So I can't fault academics, especially for seeing anime as juvenile, and there's a lot of that out there, and there's a lot of out there that isn't. But it's okay. It's a mistake, but it's not a completely ridiculous mistake, I guess I should say. Oh, the Raspberry Pi thing. So we actually recorded a bunch of videos about the Raspberry Pi, and then as I was assembling the videos last week, I discovered that the videos were really boring. The approach we had taken was very drab. So we're actually planning on re-recording some of those tomorrow. And see you, Epic Anime Freak. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. So we're actually planning on re-recording those Raspberry Pi videos tomorrow. We have a whole bunch of them planned. But we need to find out a more exciting approach than just saying, this is a Raspberry Pi, here's what you can do with it. So yeah, we are planning a bunch of sort of introductory, okay, what is this Raspberry Pi kind of videos, and they should be fun. So yeah, those should be coming. Unfortunately, well, I've been doing a lot more reading up on marketing and business and such, and realized Otaku no Video and Geek Spectrum need to be more interesting. They need to be more remarkable than they are now. We've gotten the production values up to a point where the audio is okay, the video is okay. And now we need to work on how to do that. Yeah, and Liquidus, I mean, that is a true thing with, in Japanese society in general. It is considered immature to be into anime once you're kind of out of middle school. That's funny, Steve. Unfortunately, I've never been drunk. So don't know what that would look like. But I mean, the thing about being into anime, it's like being into Lego. It's like being into animation in general. A lot of people see it as being immature. That's okay. They can see it as immature. It's why you don't necessarily want to flaunt it. You don't want to talk about anime in a job interview. But that's okay. Now, granted, I once got a job interview by presenting on anime. I once got a job that way, but the interview, part of the interview process was to do a presentation and to actually go through a presentation with people there. and they said choose something that you know very well and go for it. And I said, this is the presentation I know really well. It's a brief history of anime. No thanks, Steve. I am more than willing to keep my mental faculties. I prefer keeping that edge, actually. No, actually, I don't like beer. I'll drink beer, but I'm not a big fan of. I'm actually not a big fan of alcohol in general. Again, I can drink it, but it's like, eh. Yeah, I tried craft beers. I tried things. There are a couple of beers that I don't want to say I love, but I'll drink. But yeah, alcohol is just too problematic, and I've known too many people who've made too many bad mistakes on alcohol that I'm not willing to go down that road. Just not worth it. Not again, it's one of and not. I'm not saying this for everyone else. Just personally, it doesn't really do anything for me. Yeah, I don't smoke, but then again, I had people in my life who smoked, and it was no, yeah. But again, you want to drink, that's fine, and a glass of wine now and again, nothing wrong with that. It is true that alcohol can certainly make socializing easier, and I certainly have that experience. But and to be fair, Liquidus, that's what people say about me all the time, that I'm to stay away from him. He's weird, so I don't need alcohol to further encourage those statements. Well put, Dark Realm. You go watch Frozen 10 times. I'll go watch Gundam 10 times. Absolutely. Oh yeah, smoking and allergies. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I have kind of significant allergies, so that's actually a stronger reason for me to avoid it. But like my paternal grandfather smoked like a chimney all his life, and just walking into his house, and just generally the smokers I've known, often nice people, often very fine people, but the smoking didn't really help their lives. It didn't really improve their quality of life. Yeah. No, I hear you, Steve. And the other reality is that my shows do tend to be kind of cerebral, shall we say. It's one of the reasons why we're doing the pie show. We want to kind of break it up a little bit, be a little different. I think honestly, if I do something, I'd like to do something more scripted, like fictional. I'd like to do a show that actually has a storyline. I think that'd be cool. Whatever that would be. But kind of think that guy with the glasses, the nostalgia critic, that kind of thing. Although those tend to go on a little bit too long for my tastes. But I think it'd be fun to do that. Yeah, I have a terrible sweet tooth. I'm like a hobbit. I'll have dessert and then second dessert and then breakfast, which is a donut. So I gotta be careful for that. With that. Oh, dust allergies. That's bad. I have a dust mite allergy, so I have to keep my house pretty clean. But dust allergy, that sucks. That's really bad. Yeah, I don't joke. Kidding. But yeah, we're we got to find some way of making these things more interesting or more remarkable. It could just be I'm not a very, that's just not me. I don't know. Or I could just jump up and down screaming and get really emotional about excuse me, or something. Yeah, the Gundam Seed Destiny video is about as emotional as I've ever gotten. Such is life. Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm starting to fade here. My eyes are starting to glaze over. So thank you all for an awesome night. And I will probably try to record a license check at some point, but it's going to be really, really short. Yeah, I hear that, Steve. Yeah, I can be a little over professional, and I don't know. I don't know of a good way of solving that. I'll have to figure it out. This is kind of what I'm like with people generally. I guess that's not true. When I'm with friends, I'm more straightforward. I don't know. One of the things that we do want to do actually is do more of these sort of one-on-one talks. That would be nice, or like a 1-on-6 talks. So we can actually do those discussions. But yeah, I'd better go to sleep because I'm meeting up with Evan tomorrow, and we want to make more cool videos. So, anyways, yes, thanks all very much for joining me on this night. This is a great conversation, and hope you all have a great weekend. And I will, again, really, honestly, thank you. This is why I do this. I really enjoy doing all this stuff, and I like helping all you guys out. So thank you. This is really cool. Yeah. Anyway, take care, guys. Thank you. See ya.